What's up, locals? It's Mike and Kenzie coming to you live from the 775. Now, before we get into this episode, we have one small request. Please be sure to like and subscribe wherever you watch or listen. Now, let's get into it.
Bonivon Dyer, welcome to your favorite locals podcast.
Thank you.
We are so excited to talk to you today for multiple reasons, but one, you are a sci-fi fantasy author, and today marks a very special day. You have released a project that has been 13 years in the making.
To the day.
Your new novel, Lest They Have Eyes. Congratulations. That's so exciting.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Very exciting.
Gosh, how does it feel?
I have been dreaming of publishing for probably 20 years, and not one feeling that I thought I was going to feel have I felt. And so probably today is being publishing day. I had all these ideas of what I would wake up and the colors would be different and like the air would taste different. And it was just a day. And I woke up to my kids and I woke up and had to clean and make breakfast.
Oh my God.
And so I feel like it also is fun that it's also just a normal day and I get to come hang out with you guys. And so, yeah, I think that I started writing when I was 14. So I just had always dreamed with a very magical lens. And life is still real.
Yes.
After your dreams come true, which is both really cool and a little bit of a dream pop, but
Totally.
That's what I imagine. So 13 years. Like, very few people have embarked on anything that takes 13 years, and then you have this moment where it's like, okay, it's finished.
yeah,
What is that feeling for you?
it does feel I do feel like it is a moment of rest, because I think for so long it was, when is this ever going to happen? And like, should I just give up? Because this is just like, obviously this isn't supposed to happen, or I'm not going to be able to do what it takes to get here. And so I do feel like having it done and people are buying it now and it's like out there, that it is a moment of like, it really did happen. And like, I can just breathe and just, yeah, I kind of just want to go back to me over the last decade and just be like, it's okay. It really does happen.
It's paid off. You're done.
Yes. Yeah. But for a really long time, it was like, maybe it won't ever happen.
Gosh, yeah. I was reading a little bit about your just like about section on your website.
Yeah.
And part of the journey for you has also been breakdowns in the shower.
Yeah.
And like self-doubt and resistance and, all of these really powerful emotions that could keep you from pursuing your dream.
Yes.
So I want to kind of go back to when you started writing. Like, where were you at in your life when you started writing this book? What was the inspiration?
To prequel your question with one more answer that you didn't ask, I wrote my first book when I was 14. And it took me 2 years to write. So I finished when I was 16, and I was fully convinced that I was going to publish it and it was going to be amazing. And my life was going to be changed and I was going to be a writer.
Going on book tour.
Yes, exactly. And then I had some people in my life read it, some adults in my life. And the response was, that was good. That was good. And I was like, but it's great. It's fantastic. What are you talking about? And there was just so much a very clear feeling of like, this isn't the book that's going to be published. And so then for a few years after that, I was really discouraged and I more focused on poetry for a while and did some short stories and things like that. And then I got married at 21. And 6 months after I got married, I had this very vivid dream where everyone in the world had gotten married. And I was the only one who hadn't, the person who was supposed to marry me refused to marry me. And in my dream, there was just this like in my blood, like shame that the one person who was supposed to be with me refused to. And there must be something so wrong with me that he wouldn't want to be with me. And I woke up and having just gotten married, so obviously that's not my reality, but it felt so real. And so I sat down and I just wrote like the opening paragraph of this girl lamenting that she was the only one in the world who didn't have love. And then I thought, now that's a really interesting idea for a book.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what started the whole thing.
Wow.
Yeah.
Great premise to start.
God.
Yeah.
Well, a lot of people don't even remember their dreams. Like I was actually talking about this with my sister-in-law, and I was like, I would literally have to write immediately down
Yeah.
dreams right away. I feel really powerful emotions from them, but sometimes I can't remember like where I was in the dream. I'm like, I know I was in a different world, but it's hard for me to grasp like what was happening.
Yeah.
And her response was that her dreams are so vivid
Yeah.
that it literally feels like reality. So is that similar to you? Where I mean, clearly because it brought up such a strong emotion to make you want to write this book.
Yes. Yeah, I would say in general, when I remember my dreams, they're always very visceral, which it can be good. And then it's like really hard when it's more of a nightmare.
Yeah.
But I would say, yeah, in my mind, I'm like, I'd rather just not dream because usually the vividness is more in the scary things. But the book that I wrote in high school also was after a dream that I had had. And those two dreams, and then I've had one more dream only in my whole life like that. And that's another book that I want to write eventually. They had this very real life quality that I've never had in another dream, where it was past just like seeing in your dream and I can like feel things, like textures. And those 3 dreams are the only dreams that have ever been like that for me.
Wow.
And so I'm like, I don't know what that means, but all 3 of them are like, these are books that either I have written or I want to write. And so yeah. So those
Wow.
ones stick with me because it's like my senses are being activated in a way that like my normal dreams, even though they're very vivid, are not like that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That is pretty crazy, actually.
Yeah.
I don't know if I've had the feeling of falling,
Yeah. Terrifying. Terrifying.
and I've seen myself. I've looked at myself dying before,
Mhm.
but I haven't like smelled anything in my dream or
Yeah.
touched anything in my dream that felt tangible enough to be like, oh yeah, it's soft
Yes.
or hard or whatever. So
Yeah.
that is.
Only 3 times in my whole life.
Yeah, but that's a superpower. That almost seems like
Yeah.
a gift being bestowed upon you.
Yeah.
to
I have
create
wondered
this.
myself like what that means, but
Yeah.
It's evoking like actual human emotion that
Mhm.
everybody resonates with, and it's like this
yeah.
unconscious fear of like, am I worthy of being loved?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like
And
bump and shit.
yeah.
So, question about Eleusis.
Mhm.
Okay, is there a tie to the Eleusinian aspect of like Greece at all?
A lot of my book, I have chosen to use words from other languages, but I would say for the first 8 years, I did not keep track of anything.
Mhm.
So there's a lot of aspects in my book that are like, I know that I Googled a synonym or, like another word, but then don't remember why I did it. So I know that when I looked up Eleusis, I was trying to find a word that went with utopia. And because the idea in the book is that they become so advanced that there's no war, there's like perfect peace everywhere. And so it's this actual utopia. So I know that I had looked for a word that was like synonymous with that. But probably not enough research to
worries.
connect it. Yeah.
I was
in that way.
wondering just because the Eleusinian mysteries, it's a real thing in Greece,
Mhm.
and people would go to this place called Eleusis, and you get these great minds like Marcus Aurelius and
Oh,
Plato,
cool.
Cicero, and Hadrian. They all go there, and it's like this. It's a blend between psychedelic and spiritual journey, and you come out on the other side,
Ooh.
and it's like these great figures of history that go there and then like are initiated. And it's very secretive. We don't know much about it besides
Yeah.
that, but they come out of it, and I was wondering if there was a tie.
Dude, I wish.
Okay.
I want there to be now. I think I might just claim that.
Yeah, you totally
I
could.
always meant that. Oh,
Future podcast now.
Yes.
fun.
No, that's super cool. I didn't know that.
I don't know. I'm weird about history.
Yeah. No, that's super interesting.
Where did you create this world? Like, where is the inspiration coming from to create a world like this when you're living in a reality, which is Truckee and Reno?
hmm
Where does this come from?
I've always been a very avid reader
Okay.
my whole life. And so I think the idea of just being able to make up anything I want was very alluring for me. And so I think that early on when I started writing, very much I saw writing as an escape
Mhm.
of like, I pretty immediately started having babies and starting a family, and there's just so much responsibility that goes in those ways or goes in that. And so I felt like writing was a place for me to kind of be filled up. And so I think that I ended up using my writing time to really work out my own heart issues. And so what you're reading right now is incredibly different to like what I wrote back in, 2021, 2022, or I'm sorry, 2012, 2013, 2014, like those years, because that was, 21, 23-year-old me figuring out life. And so then 5 years later, when I would work on those scenes again, well, I had grown. So I would have my characters grow. And then 5 years later is like, oh, well, that's not how I would handle the situation anymore.
Right.
So let's change how you're handling the situation. So very much even more than the characters growing, I feel like it's a character arc for me and like growing in what I find courage to be, because I think for so many years, courage was just so black and white, and you're either a courageous person or you're not. You're either like a Gryffindor or a Hufflepuff, and I think that there was not a lot of place in my mind for more of that quiet strength and for more, even to use the word like feminine strength, because, your hero has a sword and they chop people's heads off, and like they defend the weak and like that's it. And so to have this world where my main character, she starts out very weak, what would strength look like for her? Because she's not going to all of a sudden know how to do karate and know how to go save,
Yeah, it's
a
not
people
the
group.
Matrix where you can download a new
Yes,
skill.
exactly. And so I feel like that is also for me, because there's a lot of me in my main character. And so for me, I'm like, okay, I'm not like that. So what does strength look like for me? And themes of identity, I think a big part of that is being a mom too, and wanting my children to have a good grasp on their identity, a good grasp on why truth matters. Like a lot of, what's in there is either what I'm teaching myself, what I'm teaching my children, what my friends are experiencing, what my marriage is experiencing. And so, I feel pretty deeply. So all my characters do too.
Yeah.
Confronting moral dilemmas, and it's showing a lot of growth.
Yeah.
So when you pour yourself into a character, an example that I think of is like Larry David with Curb Your Enthusiasm. So it's an idealized version of himself. It's not always how he would respond, but if you could picture that character to be the best version, right? Like, this is how I want to be confrontational.
Yes.
When you're pouring yourself into a character, are you writing it exactly as how you would do it? Or is it going to be fictionalized where it's like, I'm going to be far more aggressive in this situation and far more soft in this situation?
I find that a lot of my characters are aspects of me. And so, for example, the main character, I just have to go back to like 15-year-old insecure me, and I write from that perspective. And I remember like, in fact, I was just telling my daughter the other day about a friend that I had who in a public setting with other friends had like really embarrassed me. And even as I was telling her, I was like starting to sweat.
You're feeling
And
it
like
all
my
over
heart
again.
started pounding a little bit, because I was like, oh my gosh, I can still remember how embarrassed I was. And here it is 20 years later, but telling my daughter I'm like on the verge of tears because it was so mean. And and I just go back to that place. And so I think that instead of it being, I don't know that I have any of my characters being who I want to be as much as they just happen to be a part of me. Another one of the characters who I relate to the most, in book 1, you see him and he is more of like the leader, the like charismatic one, the very charming one, in charge of people, caring about their hearts. And I feel like that's like a big part of who I am too. But I know all of his weaknesses. And so in book 2, it's something that like you explore more. And so sometimes in book 1, like when I'm writing him, it almost feels fake, because I know that I can be that way sometimes, that like I want people to see the good in me. I want people to think that I'm a good person. I want people to think that I'm funny. I want people to think that I'm going to be there for them, that I'm reliable. But then I also know that in my own heart of hearts that I'm like hiding away is that sometimes I'm really cowardly. That sometimes I'm really manipulative. That sometimes it's like, well, am I being really nice to this person just because I'm trying to control their reaction? Or am I being kind just because, I want to be kind or whatever? And so I think that that's one thing that's hard, is putting my weaknesses in characters, because I'd rather them just be beautiful. I'd rather
Right.
people just love them and be like, that's the best character. They're so great. But for me, I feel like the most authentic thing is to give them weaknesses. And so that's what's really scary for me, is giving my characters not just like the good things about me that I like and I want people to enjoy about me, but like the things that are like ugly and the things that are shameful and the things that are like, well, I would never want to tell you on this podcast type of thing. And so I think, instead of like an idealized version of myself, I end up being like very honest, to a point where sometimes I'm like, do I want people to read this? I don't know, because this is very much my fear that I'm like presenting here. And so in book 1, you're more seeing like the fear of the main character and her rejection. And so some of the things that she thinks, those are real things that I have thought in my life when I'm feeling rejection. And so it does feel very vulnerable. But
That's what makes it very real too. That's what takes it from
scary.
like fantasy
Yeah.
and people actually connect with these characters because
Yeah.
there's that vulnerability and you're like, oh, I relate to this. I
Mhm.
feel like a bad person today. Oh no.
Yeah. Yeah, because I think we all have that in us, and depending on how you were raised and what you value, those things like either need to be hidden or they need to be flaunted. And so, having characters that do both I feel like that part's fun for me, I have some characters who, in fact, I have one who every time I write from her perspective, I do the exact opposite of what I would do. So if like in the situation, I would respond one way, I write her the opposite way. So she's kind of my antithesis. And then that's hard because sometimes I want her to have like meaningful moments with characters, but I have to really think about it, because I'm like, well, this is how I would go about having a meaningful moment with somebody, and she doesn't do it that way. And so I have to really think about people in my real life who are a little bit more like her, and be like, well, how would they go about being vulnerable, because it looks nothing like me. And so just having all their little personalities be unique, I think is important, but it's also like either opposites of me or parts of me. And I just had somebody ask me recently about it, and they were like, so the whole book is just you? Like, you didn't base it off of anybody else? And I was like, well, I'm sure I did. It's just that the most real parts are your own experience.
Yeah.
And so,
I think a lot of authors go through that, especially when they're writing new worlds. It's like, where else are you going to pull the story from? You're going to pull it from your own life, your own experience. And I think that's what makes each fantasy book really interesting, because everyone has a different perspective in the world and their own lived experience. I wanted to ask about the world specifically and the characters versus the environment, how you created each one. So when you were thinking of the world that you wanted to create, did you base it off of the characters first? Did you build the characters and come up with their own personalities, or did you build the environment first and then put the characters in it? Like how does that process work?
100% characters first.
Okay.
If I wrote with no audience, I would only write dialogue and relationships. Like, that's it. That's what I'm interested in.
Okay.
And so for me, when in the very first draft, maybe even the first like couple drafts, in my mind, I was like, okay, it's this utopia, so the whole world is kind of the same, because in the world you can travel across the world in an hour, and all of the territories are really just our continents. The continents are so like interconnected that I just kind of saw it as like one big world, and then my characters were like what mattered. And then I had an editor read it, and she was like, this is not real at all. Like, even at the time I was living in Truckee, she's like, even in Truckee, you have like your locals, you have the people who come and visit, you have, stay for a long time, you have people who just come every once in a while. And like, even just this one teeny tiny town is filled with so many different people. And what do we love to do as people, even if it's not good? Us and them. And there's so much in our world where we want to have, for good and for bad reasons, we want to have our own little groups. And then when you are a group, you become something different. And so she was like, it's so unrealistic that there would just be like this one culture. And so I was like, so blown away by that because I'd never even considered that. And then that was when I was like, okay, well, if I'm going to have each of these, territories be different, well, then what would they all look like? And so then that's when, each of them kind of created their own dialect of the language. And then that's when the hair color came in because, for those of you listening, each of the territories have a different hair color. And so then all of a sudden there were all these differences that I hadn't played with before. And I was like, oh, well, and then assigning my characters to where they were from, I was like, oh, you would interact so differently now. So I felt like that whole next draft was just so different because the environment had changed.
Yes.
And then the more I got to know the world over, let me think, that was... So for the past 10 years then, I would say that I've been playing with that world. Every year it gets more depth. Even just the other day I was writing and I'd always known that there were like these intrinsic laws in the world, but I'd never written them. And so I like took the time to like, there's 13 of them and like I wrote them out and like what they are and the order is important. And now I'm like, dang it. Now I wish that was in book 1 and it's not going to be, it's going to be in book 2. So I just feel like I get to play constantly finding out more and more depth. And then now that's been very inspiring for me. And now I really enjoy writing that way. But I would say in general, first draft, first ideas are usually character driven because I just really love people and I'm so like interested in how people's minds work and yeah.
Yeah, that was something that was really interesting to me because your characters have so much depth to it and you also have created worlds with its own language.
Yeah.
Like when I was reading, I was like, okay, we have to it was almost like creating our own glossary.
Yes.
Which was super fun. But yeah, it just, there is so much depth to the book in so many different ways. And that's, why I wanted to know, like, did you create the environment first? Did you create the characters? Like, how do you put this world together? Because that takes so much time. Even just your response now, you were talking about different pivots that you've had to make along the way.
Yeah.
So at what point were you writing and you're reading, the plot, and you're like, oh, this isn't going to work. And I have to change. Did that ever happen?
All the time.
Oh, really?
How heartbreaking is that when
yes.
you go into it, like,
Yes.
this was so good.
Yeah.
Now I'm lost.
Yes. I would say now going forward, I don't think that it's ever going to take, I 100% know it will not take me 13 years to write a book again.
Yes.
I'm certain of that. And when I tell people that, or when I tell authors that, I would say people are always like, why did it take so long? And I'm like, I know, which now I'm like thankful for the process because like I said, I've grown so much. So I'm so proud of it now. Whereas like the version that I wrote when I was 23, thank God that nobody ever read that. But I would say, oh my gosh, my mind just went blank. What was your question again?
With the plot changing so many times. When did you know, this isn't going to work?
So I would say the very first draft, like I said, was very one-dimensional or, two-dimensional or whatever. And then when that editor came in and like shared all that with me, I was like, okay, then I'm going to change so much. And then 2 years later, I sent it to another editor. Again, that expectation of she's going to love it. It's going to be amazing. Yeah. Like she's going to be like, get it published. I can't wait to buy it. And she tore it up and I'd never met the woman. I hired her like from a internet website, but she like ripped into the characters, she ripped into the world, and like I actually was so devastated that I put it away for 6 months and I did not write for 6 months.
Wow.
And was like, I will never write again because who knew I was so terrible at writing? I really was convinced I was great. And then 6 months later, I was like, I had this idea come into my mind and I was like, I don't even want to think about it because I don't want to go back. But then that idea kept like coming back to me and I'd be like just doing, dishes or driving and like this idea kept playing out in my mind. And I was like, okay, I will fix it one more time and then like that's it. Like if it's still bad, like I can't continue on. So that whole edit took me, it ended up being, I got pregnant again. And every time that I'm pregnant, I have zero creativity. Like from the moment of conception until the moment the baby's born, I have no creativity. I don't want to read. I don't want to write. I have other interests artistically and like nothing when I'm pregnant. And then my babies come and those next 2 weeks, it was like a buildup of creativity. And then I write so much. But anyway, so I'd gotten pregnant. So it did end up taking a while. But when I finished it, I was like, okay, I think it's good. But now I don't have the confidence anymore and I don't know. So I hired one more editor and essentially she was like, I mean, it's a good book. It's not a great book, but it's a good book. And at that time I was like, I want to give up, but I love these characters. And I love the idea of this being a good book.
Yeah.
And so I was like, okay, I'm gonna, and she had given me reasons. And so for the next like year and a half or something, like I worked in it. So all of that, the timeline leads up to 2019. And it was December and I was like wrapping Christmas presents for my kids. And I was like, I'm so done with this book because there was some pieces that like, I liked all these pieces, but I couldn't see how they fit together. And there was something missing and I didn't know what it was, like the wow factor, or even just like, I don't know, like the thing that really brought the world together. And so I was praying and I was like, okay, either you help me figure all this out or I'm done. Like I'm done with this book. I'm going to trash it and I'm going to do something else. I'm going to start all over because this is so miserable. And I just like prayed that for like a week over and over and over again. Like you have to show up. You have to show me. Anyways, it was the week before Christmas and I was doing something, I don't know, just at my house. And all of a sudden this like idea like plopped in where it was like the puzzle piece that put these two together. Woo, sorry.
Good catch.
That's okay.
And I was like, oh my gosh, that makes so much sense. And I like ran over and I like wrote it down. And then like later on in that day, I had another piece that like came in and I was like, that's how they fit together. And so I just felt like that whole week, I ended up getting like one of those like artist books that are like this big and like just writing like page after page of like putting these pieces together. And at the end, it was like almost Christmas time. And I was like, that's it. Like, that's what I was missing. And a big piece of it was the greater backstory that I hadn't quite put together of why these things related to each other. And so then after 2019, I got a writing partner and we did a draft together and it was really good. And then that was when I met my, at the time, editors that turned into my publishers. And so I started working with them and that has been, I started working with them in 2021. So it's been a 4-year process. And I did 7 drafts with them. And I would say the first 4, yes, every time they're like, you're close, but no.
Wow.
Every time. And so after every time I would get a draft back from them and the answer was still not ready, I would definitely have like a month of just like depression of like, oh my gosh, how can it still not be ready? Like, I don't understand. And also at the time I was self-publishing, so everything I was paying for out of pocket, and like we'd put money aside for it, and then life happened and something would go on. We'd have to use that money, and then I'd have to push back being able to send them another draft. And so it just felt so much more disappointing, even though I was closer than I'd ever been before. And then in January of 2023, my publishers, or at the time still editors, reached out and said, we opened up a traditional publishing portion of our company and we would love to publish your book.
Wow.
And so for me, it was like them telling me, because they, had expressed how much they liked my book, but that was a moment of like, you believe in this book. Like the fact that you are wanting to financially put yourself out there for me, for this book. Okay, it is a good book. Like it took so long to get here. And so anyways, even since then, it had 2 more drafts. Yeah. And so when I'm talking about like today feeling like a day of rest is because I just feel like it's been 13 years of like striving and working and hoping and so much disappointment and so many steps back and so much like just thinking to myself like, you're so wrong. You think that this is worth writing and you're wrong. And like to just be like, it's done. Whether it's good or not, it's done.
I'm like feeling so much emotion for you right now. I like want to cry. Like you have so much I'm like actually teary-eyed right now because I think I can just relate to you so much, just not in writing a book. I am not a writer, but in terms of just creative expression, and being told, that it's not good, or yeah, like that's so hard to hear.
Yeah, it is.
And you have so much creative grit to just keep pursuing your dream and to keep believing in yourself and believing in the characters and the story to have finished it over a 13-year period, which most people, like Mike was saying earlier, people would give up. And you did not give up. Like that is so inspiring, and it honestly is inspiring for me right now, even with just the podcast. Like I think so many times like we have been like, what are we doing? Are we even worth like putting our voice out there?
Yeah.
Like what is this? What are we doing? And you question yourself and you have self-doubt, and especially when you have people saying, yeah, it's really not that great. It's good. It's good.
Not great.
Yeah. That sucks to hear.
Spike right
Yes,
here.
yeah.
Thanks for that.
Yeah. So do you think that their I want to call it critique.
Mm-hmm.
Do you think that made you a better writer?
100%.
Okay.
Yeah. I think that what's hard about critique is that it's, especially in our creativity, it feels like it's going back to rejection. It feels like it's such a rejection.
Yeah.
And this idea of like who you are inside is not enough. And it took me a really long time to realize that people weren't saying that they were saying your writing needs growth. And especially like that one that I told you that I really put down writing for 6 months. That time in particular was such, for me, an attack on my identity and who I was, of like my whole life. Because I've been writing stories my whole life. And then, like I said, in high school, writing that book. And then at 14, in my mind, I was like, I'm going to be a writer. Like that is what I'm going to be. And so for me, it was a moment of like, I'm not going to be a writer because I'm not a good one. And I think that there's this huge misunderstanding in our growth where we don't want to work hard to be better. We just want to be good. We want to be the kid who started out as amazing and then just like constantly was more amazing, and everything you do and everything you touch is just perfect. And there's such I feel like there is a place to say like you're naturally good at something, but I feel like even things like writing, like you have to become better at it. And being 22, 23, 24, I just wasn't good at writing yet. But that doesn't mean that I wasn't a writer. And that doesn't mean that I didn't have a story to tell. It just meant that if I really wanted a bigger audience than just my family, that I had to become better. And so I wish that's one thing that I wish I could have told myself, was writing is what's going to make me better. So don't stop doing that. And yeah, I think that the grit and the continuation on was so painful. And now looking back, I'm like, oh, it didn't have to be so painful. You didn't have to cry so much.
Oh,
Maybe
yeah.
you did. Maybe that's also part of the whole process.
Yeah.
'Cause talent gets you far, but the hard work that goes into all of that gets you much further.
Agreed.
Like
Yeah.
you need to have some talent to start. But
Yes.
then in order to actually carry it to fruition, and 13 years later,
Yeah.
that's hard work.
Yeah.
That's not just talent. That's a lot of tears, a lot of sweat, a lot of breakdowns.
Yes.
Like-
Yeah. And I think that all of the critiques, like I think back to the ones that really hurt the most, they were right. And I think that there have been some edits over the years, or some feedback that I've gotten from editors that like I didn't agree with, and like still to this day I'm like, yeah, I just didn't agree. I feel like that's what you saw important in your writing. That's not what I see as important in my writing. So I feel like there is that space that if someone gives you critique, you don't have to take 100% of it.
Yeah.
But to have the willingness to be like, but what in here is true? What in here do I need to look at my own self in the eye and be like, yeah, they were right. And so I feel like those places where I made myself go there and see that people were right was when I became better, because it was like, I'm doing this thing wrong. So how do I do it better? And over the years, I'm always constantly in college because I've never graduated and I never wanted to go in debt for it. So we only take classes when I can afford it.
That's
So
smart.
that's
That's a good
another
approach.
another thing over the last decade is I'm technically in my second semester of my junior year in a Bachelor of Creative Writing.
Nice.
Oh my gosh.
But I just really don't ever get to do it. But anyways, I would say over the years, choosing to do college classes, choosing to buy books on writing, choosing to go to writing classes, choosing to take workshops, like all of those things helped as well. But I would say the critiquing moments were the hardest because it was the most accurate.
Mhm.
And then be like, okay, so I really suck at that. Good to know. Well, how do I
Yeah.
get better at it? And then that's when the classes could come in and like help hone in those skills.
Because then you can focus on the specific things that you
Yeah.
need to grow. Were you getting critiques from people that were not in the writing space, that were not editors, or did you only listen to people that were editors?
Yes. So all of the editors that I ever worked with were professionals. And I over the years I had a couple like friends read it. But for the most part I would say that the feedback that I got was from editors, because when my friends would read it, they'd be like, "It's the best! I love it so much," which
Also-
is so great, but
Yeah.
not helpful.
Yeah,
Yeah.
artistically, you want somebody who actually knows what they're talking about. Is
Yes.
in the industry, understands what they can actually give you feedback on.
Mm-hmm.
'Cause other people who just have like insight of like, this is how I feel about it.
Yeah.
Like, great, that's like one person. I'm looking for more of like an industry approach.
Yes.
Yeah, that's
But
gotta
there's
be-
also like the consumer,
Mhm.
like you want to make the book interesting enough for people to read it and want to read it.
Mhm.
So then where does that balance lie? Where you're creating something from your own creative expression, you're putting yourself into these characters, your lived experience, but then you also have to make it digestible for the readers to understand and take them through the
Mhm.
world so that it's clear
Yeah.
what's going on. So, yeah, like where does that balance lie with trying to appease a consumer,
Yeah.
but then also taking critiques from professionals that are going to guide you in the direction that you need to go to publish it?
Yeah. So, like I said, there's been a couple times over the years where like a friend would read it, but a couple years ago, maybe two, I had a friend of mine who he just loves fantasy and loves sci-fi. And so I was like, could you read this just from a reader's perspective? So I don't necessarily, I'm not looking for an edit. If you want to tell me of the grammatical mistakes, go for it. But I'm just wondering for you as someone who consumes like fantasy and sci-fi, will you just tell me first impressions? So I felt like that was a great way to hear from just a reader, not a professional. And that was very helpful to hear his perspective. And then part of the process of getting published was I had a group of 10 beta readers. So there's a couple different terms in the industry. So one is an alpha reader. And so that is somebody who reads your book when you're still drafting it. So I have one alpha reader right now where I'm writing book 2 and I send her chapters. So it doesn't look good. It's not professional, it's not professionally edited. It's just like raw first draft, but the idea is like, do you like the direction? Is this like good? You've read for book 1, so do you like the character development? So that's an alpha reader. Alpha reader. A beta reader is someone who your book is done and you feel like it's good enough. And so you're putting it out to readers to get their perspective on it, knowing that you're still going to edit it. So I'm going to edit it based off of the beta readers. So same thing around like a year and a half, 2 years ago, we had a group of 10 beta readers. 5 of them were people that I knew and 5 were complete strangers that I still to this day have never met. My publishers live in New Zealand. And so they had picked 5 beta readers from New Zealand. And then I had my 5 beta readers that were, again, people who love the genre and love reading. And so the idea is just like, as a reader, what's your perspective? And then my publishers interviewed each of them to like hear their feedback on it. And so that was when it was, okay, we're not looking editorially, we're looking like you like books, read this book, tell me what you think. And so the kind of feedback that I got from them was vastly different than the kind of feedback that I got from editors.
Right.
And there wasn't a whole lot that I had to change, thank God.
Yeah.
One of the times that it didn't have to be like a whole total rewrite. But I would say that the insight was so different because it was just like, yeah, I'm just sitting on my couch reading and this is what I thought about. Not like I'm at my work, I'm at my job and like you're paying me to do this. So yeah, I think that the type of feedback was very different. And readers are just a lot more encouraging than editors are.
Yeah. Well, I feel like there is a balance when giving feedback and critique is you do need to have a little bit of encouragement because then I'm actually exactly like you where you're like, I didn't write for 6 months.
Yeah.
Like I'm actually so afraid of feedback. I'm very good at it at work because I don't like my identity is not in my work. But something that I attach myself to where it's personal, it's so hard for me to take feedback because it literally is like what you said, it's me. I'm
Yes.
the problem. I'm
Yeah.
not enough. So I'm wondering, like, how do you take feedback now, just from the 13 years of critique and edits and pivots that you had to do? Has this changed you as a person? Like, has this made you grow?
You're probably a pro at it.
Yeah.
Yes, I actually really enjoy it now. And this is why. Because I can remember early drafts of my book. Like, in fact, I found one the other day and was reading it and it was like, ugh, like just like such an ick.
Yeah.
And was like, the reason why nobody ever read this was because I got good critique. And now, like, this book that you're looking at, like, I know that it's the product of me choosing to work really hard and to learn and to like write, but it's also a product of other people saying, this is what you're not seeing is a weakness. And now I'm going to tell you. And so now I see critique as, oh my gosh, you're going to make me better. You're going to come in and see from a different perspective that I don't have. And you're going to, from your own life experience, through your filters, process something that I'm doing creatively and letting me know so that whatever is lacking, I can hopefully fix it, and then it relates to more people. And so, I mean, I would say it's not like I'm like, ooh, tell me how terrible I am.
Yeah.
I love the feeling.
Right.
But I would say that now it is not devastating anymore. And I think I've also been able to compartmentalize me needing to grow as a writer doesn't change the fact that I am one. And I would say just in life in general, that like in marriage, in being a mom, in having friendships, like having people tell you like, you hurt me, you did this thing, like it's them, it's not a rejection of who I am as a human being. It's like, well, we all have things that we need to grow in. And so, yeah, I would say that now I see critique in a very positive light, and I look forward to it because your words are only going to make me better.
That's a very well-rounded approach, because in the artistic and creative community, critique is like, you're not doing what I'm doing.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like, that's the immediate response that I have. I do stand-up comedy, and
Oh my gosh,
I love it. And when it doesn't go well, I'm already knowing and like shitting on myself about it. But when you get critique back, you're like, oh, this hurts, and some of it's true, and it doesn't feel good.
Yes.
Yeah, going through that, that's a very well-rounded approach. I appreciate that.
Yeah.
So I'm interested in your writing process.
Okay.
Tell me all about it. Like, how do you write? You also have kids, you have a life. Where do you find time?
Yeah. So when everybody was younger, I'm fortunate that my kids always did really well napping. And so I have 4 kids. And so as my first one, and then the second one, and the third one were all being raised together, they all took a nap at the same time every day in the afternoon for 3 hours.
Wow.
And like, I think it was just some grace bestowed upon me. So essentially, while up until my oldest daughter was like 5 even, she just loved napping. So for that season, I had 3 hours literally every day to write because I was a stay-at-home mom. And so I had the time to write. Then as my kids got older, then we just did quiet time because that was super important for me to have that time. But then like they couldn't stay in their rooms for that long. So it went down to an hour. And so I was like, okay, I at least have 1 hour to write a day. And so that was every afternoon for years and years I had to write. And then my husband travels for work a lot. And so especially when my kids were younger. And so anytime he wasn't home, I would write, mostly because I have no self-control with TV. And with my husband, if we're watching TV together at 9:30, he'll say, okay, let's turn it off so we can go get ready for bed. And I'm like, oh, okay, sure. But when he's not there, it's like, well, what's one more episode? What's one more episode? And I'm not kidding, like staying up till like 2 a.m.
Yeah.
Like I just have no impulse control with TV.
No, it's really
the worst,
bad.
especially when like the episodes are an hour long.
I know.
And at 11:30, you're like, what's one more hour of being awake?
They leave you on the edge too, where you're like, I can't find out what happened.
Oh my gosh. So I pretty early on, made a rule for myself that I'm not allowed to watch TV when my husband's not home, literally just because then I'd wake up the next morning and we were homeschooling. This was our first year that we weren't homeschooling. So all that time I was homeschooling and it was like, I'd be exhausted the next day for no reason. For what? A stupid show. So then when my husband was out of town, I wrote at night. So that was my life of writing for most of my life up until I would say like the last maybe 5 years. And then I would say in the last 5 years, my kids have gotten older, and then it's just a lot harder to have time for yourself because you are busy with like their schedules, and there's just more to do, I feel like, as everybody's getting older. And then my body did this really fun thing where if I looked at my computer screen past like 9 o'clock, I would be awake, like wide awake for hours and hours, like at the night, like laying in bed awake. So I couldn't write at night anymore.
No.
So then I would try to do writing during like the time where we would finish school and before I needed to like go be productive and like prep dinner and stuff. So I'd have like, I don't know, maybe 2 hours in the afternoon. And then that was the only time that I have for writing. So that was kind of hard. But anyways, then this past year, my 3 older kids are going to school for the first time, a private school here in Reno, and just my youngest is in kindergarten, and so I'm just homeschooling him. But I went from homeschooling last year, it was a 5th grader, a 3rd grader, and a 1st grader, like all different curriculums, all at different stages, all with huge, huge emotions. And so the last year that we homeschooled, I really didn't write at all, actually. Thankfully, we were doing a lot of editing, and so I just had to fix things and send them back. But to like actually be creatively working on book 2 like didn't happen at all. And so that was very unexpected. I mean, I was going to have more time, but I really didn't think about the fact that if my kids were in school that I was going to have a bunch of time to write. And so, like I said, I'm homeschooling just my youngest, but it's kindergarten. So it takes like a half an hour to an hour a day. And then 2 days a week one day he goes and hangs out with my sister because his best friend is his cousin, her daughter. And then one day he goes and hangs out with my mom because he's like obsessed with my mom. Yeah. And so 2 days a week, I actually have like full on work days. And then the other days I write in the afternoon while like he plays, my youngest. And so like, this is like the first time ever where I'm like, writing is like a job. Yeah. Like I get to get up and like go to work, which is in my own house, but I have an office. And so this has been such a fun year of allowing writing to not just be where can I squeeze you in to I have made so much space for you. So this year has been really fun.
Oh, it sounds like you have a great life, honestly. Like great lifestyle, great balance. I kind of want to switch gears a little bit. I do want to come back to writing, but I have not talked to someone who's homeschooled 3 kids. And I have now 4, but
all at the same time though.
Yeah, but like homeschooling 3 kids in different grades, that is such a unique experience. Yeah. And were you a teacher? Like how so you don't have to have like credentials like to homes. I guess like I don't know.
Such a great question. Yeah. No, so you do not. Okay. The nice thing is for the most part, every single thing that I've taught my kids up until 5th grade are things that all of us know basic math. All of us know how to read. Right. So I would say in that sense, it wasn't until the end of my daughter's 5th grade year where there was like math things that she was learning where I was like, I do not remember that. Yeah. Whereas before that, it was like, I understand fractions. I understand decimals. So anyways, you don't have to have an education to homeschool your kids, but depending on what kind of curriculum you have, you are like, when my kids were younger, we did a curriculum where they would watch videos. So there's this school in Florida, and they would videotape a classroom with like a teacher and the kids, and then the teacher interacted with like the videos. So she'd be like, Billy, what's the answer? Susie, what's the answer? Well, I don't know why I'm picking names from like the 1920s, but and then they'd say like students watching, what's the answer, and pause, and then let my children answer. And so I did not want to homeschool. It was never something I was interested in doing, but at the time in Truckee, for me personally, I didn't want to do any of the other options. And my oldest sister had started homeschooling, and so she was like, well, just try homeschooling. And I was like, I don't want to homeschool, because I was homeschooled from 6th to 12th grade, and I'm so social that, at the time when I was looking back on it, I was like, oh, I hated it. I just hated it so much. Since then, I've been able to look back and be like, wow, I actually had a lot of freedom. I could finish school whenever I wanted. I could wake up whenever I wanted. I got to read for hours and hours every day. Like we were very social, had lots of friends that we homeschooled with, did like homeschool things with. So I feel like now I'm able to look back and be like, okay, it wasn't miserable. I just wanted to be in school with my friends. But at the time when I started homeschooling, I was like, it was terrible and I don't want to do that. But I really just didn't want to do any of the other options. And so I was like, okay, I'll homeschool. And so we did those videos with my daughter. So I wasn't teaching at all. I was just facilitating.
Okay.
So it was like, your teacher is saying that you need this page. Here you go. Here's your page.
Yeah.
You're supposed to be doing this craft. Here's all the supplies that I pre-bought and came for you. So here you go. So we did that the first 3 years of my oldest daughter's life, and then 2 years of my second, and then only 1 of my third, because at a certain point, and I feel like there are families who do videos their children's whole education life, and it totally works for them. For my oldest, it just wasn't working for her because she hates school. So she'd tell me all the time, I hate school. So she said that when her videos would be playing, that she would just pretend like they weren't and like do something in her head. And I'd be like, but you have, like, this is your school. And so then her first half of her 3rd grade year, she wasn't learning anything. And so I decided to, which I was terrified to do. I did not want to teach. But I was like, this can't go on. So I had her stop doing the videos, and then I just sat with her and like taught her and did her work with her. And then it ended up being like not that big of a deal because I knew everything. And so like we were learning multiplication, and it was like, oh, well, I know all these multiplication facts. So it wasn't as scary. I feel like it wasn't as scary as I had thought that it was going to be. So then I was just doing that with her, but then my son would see me, my second born, he'd see us like reading together and doing stuff together. And he'd be like, I want to do school with you. I don't want to do the videos. I want to do school with you.
Oh.
And so then I was like, oh my gosh, okay. So then that next year I just did the 2 of them. And then my third was doing videos. And then she too was like, but I want to be with you. Like everyone else gets to have special time with you. And like, I don't. And so then that last year was the first time that like we didn't do any videos. I was teaching 100% of all of their curriculum, and it was just a lot for me. And some moms do it. So it's not like it's impossible. It's not that it can't work. It was just a lot for me. And as you see with my characters, they all have big feelings. And I have big feelings, and so does my husband. So all of my children have big feelings.
Oh.
And so I think that was one reason why I really wanted to homeschool too, was like, you are either at school for 7 hours or you're here for those hours. And like, you're not just learning about multiplication. You're not just learning how to read. You're learning what it means to interact with other people. You're learning what integrity means. You're learning how to work through problems with other kids. You're learning what to do with bullies. And so I was like, I want you to learn those things with me. Like, I'm sure that there are phenomenal teachers out there, and yay for them. But like, I want to be the one that you like are learning those things from. And so it was really cool all of the years that we did homeschool. And I'm specifically thinking of my oldest because she would have these like huge emotional breakdowns in school. And then maybe we didn't do school that day, but we talked about like, how do we de-escalate from anger? Like when you have these really, really big, angry, hot feelings in your body, how do you get rid of them? Like when you're feeling anxious, what does like anxiety feel like? And what should you do with it? And we would do homeschool group things. So we would go on field trips, and we had one day a week where we would do school with a bunch of other homeschool families. And she had to deal with bullies, and like she had to deal with maybe not bullies, that's too strong a word, but like people being jerks.
Yeah.
And so like, how do you deal with conflict? So anyways, it was actually super fun. So when she went to school this year, she encountered bullying, and she literally like, because she would tell me, she'd like hop in the car, how's school? She'd be like, yeah, these kids were trying to bully me. And I just looked at them and was like, no, you can't do that.
Good for her.
That the bullies were like, what? And she said, so she was having like conflict with this one boy, and she said, she like gets in the car, and she was like, so I walked up to him and I said, okay, you've been a jerk all year, because I think it was like a month or 2 into school, but she's like, you've been a jerk all year. I've been a jerk because you were a jerk, but still, I was a jerk this year, and it's time to break the ice. And I was like, what does break the ice mean? And she like didn't really have an answer. But anyway, she said that the boy was like, I don't want to break the ice. And so the next day she hops in the car and she's like, guess what? And I was like, what? And she was like, the kid came up to her again and he was like, I was thinking about it all night and I decided, you're right. It's time to break the ice.
Oh.
And became her friend.
Yeah.
So she's had 4 boys in her class that at the beginning of the year like hated her, were very unkind to her, and all 4 of them are her friends now because she was just like, yeah, you don't get to treat me that way. And so in that sense, I'm like, I really feel like that was a product of her and I working through like, what do you do when people are mean to you? Like even right now, like even though it's just your little sibling, what do you do when like your 2-year-old brother destroys the Legos that you just worked so hard on? And like working through life together, I feel like I can definitely see in my older 3, like this foundation of I know how I want to treat people and I know how I want to be treated. And like I'm going to go into those situations like with that confidence that I didn't even realize. I mean, again, I was being intentional, but it was even more fruit than I had like intended, because they all are very, like they want to be just, they want to be treated justly, and they're going to stand up for themselves, which I was so bullied in school. So I never stood up for myself a day in my life. In fact, today, I still have a hard time standing up for myself. And to see my 12-year-old daughter be like, yeah, you don't get to treat me like that is like,
that's so healthy.
gosh, you're so inspiring.
Amazing.
Yeah, no, seriously. I mean, I have always, when I've had conversations with my mom, it seems like the next generation just keeps getting better because, and that's maybe a more optimistic way of looking at it because I think some people can be like, the new generation sucks. But I really do think that the lessons that we've learned, like I can relate to that. Like I've also gone through quote unquote bullies in school. I've probably been a bully in school at some point too. And at the time, you know, it's like my parents are doing the best they can. They don't necessarily know how to teach that, but it's like I want to be able to teach that to my kids. And so it's very inspiring to hear you talk about just the way that you're talking about emotions with your kids, because I think that wasn't really taught, like anxiety. I had major anxiety when I was a kid. I did theater when I was younger, and I would get this feeling of anxiety, but I didn't know what to call it. It was like this, I would almost go into like this fainting feeling of like everything's fast and slow at the same time. And it was because I had to memorize lines and go on stage. And I was so afraid of like failing in front of people. And so it was this feeling that I would get every single time I would have a play or a musical, and I didn't know what to call it, but I would literally have like my mom would put like a washcloth over me and I would be like sweating because I'm having like legit a panic attack. But we didn't know what to call it. And now we have the language and the words to give the younger generation, and just teach them how to communicate with each other. Like that is just so mature for her age. A lot of people don't even do that our age. So it's just really inspiring that you're doing that. Do you think that homeschooling gave you that opportunity? Do you think that there's parents that have their kids in public school or private school that would still have that opportunity to teach their kids, or do you think it really comes with homeschooling?
I think that we choose to be as intentional as we want to be. So when you look at it in a black and white way, homeschooling meant that my children were home for 7 hours. Whereas right now, literally my children are gone for 7 hours a day. I have no idea what's going on. I only know what they tell me. And so in that sense, it's like, well, I think on a very practical level, you just have more involvement in that way. But I think that, if they come home, they're going to be awake now for 5.5 hours before bedtime. So I could also be incredibly intentional then. So that's been my goal this year is I personally just needed a break from homeschooling. And that's why we chose to do private school this past year. So now for me, I can get, I think what's hard about homeschooling is it's so good. I don't regret it at all. I'm still pro homeschooling. I love all of my friends and family who do homeschooling. But it was very emotionally draining. So I feel like what was hard was at the end of school being done, it was like, okay, I need space now. Because one, I need to write. Like writing for me is like I said earlier, it's such like it fills me up. So if I don't write for a long period of time, I feel like it makes me more angry and it makes me more irritable. And I just feel like it's like a really great outlet for me. So I felt like, especially that last year homeschooling, it was just like, okay, we're done homeschooling now. Like, and I would never say this, but like, go away, you know, like you go do your thing. I need to do my thing, like separation.
Yeah. It's like the opposite. Like you had 7 hours and now the next 5.5 hours.
A little, yes. Yeah, exactly. Whereas now now I feel like, okay, I can do all the things that I need to do before you get home. So that when you get home, like now it's like, well, we can be together now. And like, you can tell me about your day and now we can work through those interpersonal relationships. And like I would say that happens for sure. Like all three of them will come to me and tell me like, can I have a private conversation? Because they never want to talk in front of their siblings. And so like we'll go talk and they'll be like, you know, so-and-so did this today. Like, what should I do? And so like, I still feel like because of, again, that foundation of homeschooling, they still come to me to be like, oh, I don't know what to do in this situation. So help me. And I really hope that never changes because I love being that for them. But I would just say practically, it is different. But like I said, I was being super intentional with homeschooling. And then a little bit exhausted.
Yeah.
And now I can like really fill up with like writing and just homeschooling kindergarten. Again, like we're just learning the ABCs and like such basic things that it feels like it's practically nothing. And then when they come home, I feel like I'm not like I have so much more to give and so much more to pour in. So I don't think that homeschooling is the only way to get that, but I just know for me and for my oldest daughter that it was that time of like fighting through homeschooling that I honestly feel like has been a part of her like strength, like or has contributed to her strength as a person, because it was really important for me that she worked through her big feelings, whereas it would have just been really easy to be like, okay, you're having a bad day, go to your room, you know, or like, you know, you need a break, go away. And I never let her do that. And so I was like, okay, we're having a really hard day. Let's dig in.
Process this.
Yeah, exactly. And so I feel like it's like helped her. She now has tools where she can do that herself, even though she still lets me be a part of those moments. So all that to say, I don't think it has to be only homeschooling where those moments happen. I just know for me, it was a super important foundation for my older ones.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I love that you sit and dig into the feelings. Like, I think that's so important. My mom actually did that with me too, both my mom and dad. Any decision that I made that was off the course, we would sit down and be like, let's go piece by piece and really dig into like the why behind everything. Instead of me being in trouble, it was literally trying to unravel my decision making and then help me understand that in the future of like, okay, I'm in this situation. What is the decision I'm going to make now based off of my experience? So I think that she's going to be like really good at just understanding her own feelings moving forward, which a lot of people don't really know how to navigate even in their adulthood. So
that is actually something that's very interesting that she struggles with is dealing with adults who are emotionally immature and don't handle things in a mature way. And she'll like tell me things that, you know, different situations where she's encountered that. And she'll be like, that's like something kids do. And I'm like, yeah, that's what happens when you don't learn how to do that as a kid and you aren't like confronted with as an adult. You can go on your entire life and never know that you're acting like a 5-year-old. And so I feel like that's been something really funny to have her be like, that adult was acting like a kid.
That's crazy. What situations is she in where she's interacting with immature adults?
Oh, I don't want to call anyone.
oh, it's like, okay, yeah.
Let me give you an example without telling you who.
Okay.
So an example is that she had been very hyper and had accidentally hurt an adult. And, you know, didn't mean to, but was also not using her brain either, you know, but like also a kid. And the adult turned around and screamed at her and told her to go away.
What?
And she was like, he he could have just said like, oh, just so you know, like literally it's not, you could have just said like, oh, just so you know, you hurt me and you need to calm down. But like for him, this full on almost 50-year-old adult to turn around and yell at her and tell her to go away.
Yeah.
Really reacting to the whole situation.
Yes. And I know that what happened, like it was probably more shocking than painful, but still, I don't know. So it's
No,
things like
that's-
that where like it's just an immature response. And she's like, I don't get it.
Yeah, but like the fact that she's even recognizing like what's
Mm-hmm.
a mature versus immature at her age is, yeah. Does she get along with kids her age? Is that
Yeah.
Okay.
So she's been pretty fun. Her, most of her life, she has had guy friends. And so she's just always been more of a tomboy, really loves sports and being athletic. And we did jujitsu for a lot of years. And so
I'm in.
so she's just a lot more of a tomboy. And so all of her friends were boys because it was like, oh, you're interested in that. And so I want to hang out with you. And then this year, going to her school, like I said, right when she got there, all the boys were super mean. And so, like, in her mind, she was going to go and those were going to be her friends. And then they were really rude. And so she was like, I guess I'll be friends with these girls. And then ended up, like, loving them. And so this year has been really fun to see her now really opening up to femininity in a way that she hadn't before. Just because none of her friends were. So before it was like, yeah, you like put boogers on each other and like you lick people and you bark at people walking by. You know, like little things that little boys do.
Yeah.
And so she will tell me things like, oh my gosh, girls are really fun to hang out with. And I'm like, I know.
Nobody's trying to wrestle me.
Yes. So that was actually a funny part of the beginning of the year was she was acting like a boy in that way of being very physical and jumping on them. And she was like, yeah, they didn't like that. And I was like, yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah, you're gonna like being friends with girls.
Yes. And so she has really grown in her girl friendships, and so now she has a little group at school and like absolutely loves like hanging out with them. And so it's been really fun to see her grow in those things.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's really awesome to hear because I think sometimes kids that are mature in different ways, like maybe a little bit more than other kids would be at their age, have a hard time connecting with one another.
Yeah.
But she's probably at an age where there's just a diversity of kids that are either more mature or less mature emotionally.
And
So-
her like two best friends growing up, one of them is her cousin and one of them is just like her literal friend since a baby. And so both of them know that she feels deeply and cares about justice. So I feel like they also have grown up with her always being very communicative and always being like, you know, setting those boundaries. And so I think that they just know that she's like that.
Is she still doing jujitsu?
We took a break only because we moved and then jujitsu was so far away. And so again, with doing school, it was like, I don't want to pick you up from school and then we drive a half an hour, do jujitsu for an hour, have to drive another half an hour home, and then we didn't get to spend any time together.
Yeah.
So that's actually one thing that I'm really struggling with literally this moment in time is team sports. I've always found it to be very important. We've always done them. Since, you know, my kids got, a little bit older, but, and so it's really hard right now because I'm like, that's been so important to me, but that means that our time as a family is compromised. So we did soccer in the fall and it was like, I pick you up from school, we go do soccer, but everybody has different schedules. So it's like, I'm going to take you to one and then you to one and then you to one. And that's 3 times a week. And so it went from, okay, I have 5.5 hours with you to I have an hour and a half and then you go to bed. And so it was like, right now, what's more important is our family unit. And so I don't know what sports are going to look like. Right now for spring, we decided to not do any, but we were doing family sports. So we go skiing together and we were doing rock climbing together. But it was like together.
Yeah.
And, but like team sports, I don't know. It's hard. It's hard because I know it takes away from family time, but I also really value them. So anyways, I don't know.
You also have different ages, different genders.
Yeah.
Different times,
It's
locations.
hard to schedule all of that together unless it's like, all right, put on the skis.
Yes. And then and that one is so nice because then we're all going to leave and we're going to be gone for 3 hours, but we're together the whole time. And
I think you can also incorporate like having friends join
Yeah.
those family moments too, just so they can get that social interaction if that was something that could help. I don't know.
which again, now that they're at school, they're getting plenty of social
Right, exactly.
interaction, literally on the daily. So
Yeah.
yeah,
They're actually ready to be a family when they get home.
yeah, yeah.
These kids, I don't like them.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, and that's been interesting too. All of them have asked me if we can go back to homeschooling because they miss how much time we had together and they
Wow.
miss me and they miss being, even together as siblings because at school they're all in their own different classrooms.
Yeah.
And so that's hard too, like knowing, what to do going forward because, I know that all three of them in the last 2 weeks have asked me to go to do homeschooling again. And so I don't know. It's just
Yeah, that's so
hard.
interesting.
Summer's around the corner. Just you wait.
I know. I was like, we're not making any decisions right now.
Yeah, you have a little bit of break to make
Yeah.
make a decision.
Mm-hmm.
Well, kind of going back to your book and transitioning to some of the characters. One of the main characters is named after your daughter.
Yeah.
Which is super special.
Yeah. Actually, the name I had first. So, in the book, I had her name, and then when I got pregnant, I was like, I love this name, and I asked my husband. I was like, what do you think of this name? And he's like, I love it, and I was like, great, immediately.
Oh, so you named her after the character?
Yes.
Oh my
How much
gosh!
we love this name.
Wow. Okay, that's even more special.
Yes.
And then now when she grows up and she reads your book, it's just she's gonna feel that connection to that character.
Yeah. Actually, interestingly, she asked me if she could read it.
What?
And it's not, and there's adult themes in it,
Right.
and so I've always said when you're 14 you can read it. But her cousin read it, and so she was like, if my cousin can read it, I should be able to read it.
How old is her cousin?
4 years older than her.
Oh,
so
okay.
it's not the same, but in her mind, it's the
It's
same.
The same, yeah.
And then one of my ARC readers, his son, who's a year older than her, is going to read it. And so she's like, well, if he's reading it and my cousin is reading it, I want to read it. So in my mind, I was like, well, you can start it. I doubt you're going to finish it. So go ahead and start it. So anyways, as you know from reading the beginning, the character named after her, it starts out as a very weak character.
Yeah.
So she comes barreling into my room. It was 10 o'clock at night because she had stayed up reading and I didn't know. Barreling into my room and she goes, why is this character suck? And I was like, whoa, big feelings. And she was like, she's such a wimp. She's just letting everybody treat her however they want. And I cannot believe that you named me after her. It's just so thrown back. And in my mind, I'm like, well, I know that she's going to have a phenomenal, character arc.
Right.
And you'll appreciate her later. But she has to start from there. And so she didn't want to read anymore. So she stopped reading it. And she was like, I can't believe that you named me after her.
Oh my
It gets better,
gosh.
just like
Yeah.
that.
I know. I was like, even at the end of the book, babe, she's a lot different. And she was like, I don't know. I can't believe you did that.
I'm not going
Oh
to.
my gosh. That is so interesting. I didn't even really think about that
Yeah.
element to it.
Yeah.
Yeah, because she knows that she's named after.
And she's
this
known her whole
character.
life.
Yeah.
And so then when she finally got insight, it wasn't this big, strong warrior person.
Yeah.
That in her mind, she must have decided that it was.
Right.
It's like,
That
I
is
know
really
you share
interesting.
names, but this is more about me.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes.
I am interested in the strategy of that. Just in the strategy of developing a character because I feel like I'm really in tune with movie series and TV series. I really love character development in that. But when I'm reading, I'm not a huge reader. And so it takes for me a while to understand what is this character going through and really get into the depth of who they are versus when you're watching it, you can kind of see expression on their face.
Yes.
You feel what they're going through. And so what is the strategy of kind of prolonging that character development and then having them rise from the ashes at the end where you can see that heroism?
Well, I think to me it always starts out with even just to get to know a character.
Yeah.
So if I have a new character enter into the story, I do something called I take them out on a date. So I pretend, I like get up a Word document and I pretend honestly that we went on a date and what would they say and like what would they do. So like that is my first initial getting to know a character. And so I put us in a restaurant and I like depending on what they order, like that shows me something about them. Whether they drink or not shows me something about them. And so like I'm getting to know them in our date. And then I take them out of like that scenario and I put them in my world and I write chapters from their past. So I write something from their childhood, something from their teenage years, and something from their young adulthood. And depending on how old they are, like maybe something later on in life. So I get to know them a lot based off of that interaction. Then I have like if I feel like I have a handle on the character, I can move on. Some characters are just really like, I still don't know you. So I have these questionnaires that I go through of like what, like even things like what's their greatest fear? What is something that they're really ashamed of? What would be the thing that immediately puts a smile on their face? And so I feel like going through those things are really helpful. Also, if I'm having a hard time, and then the very last thing I do is I figure out what their greatest weakness is. And that to me is even more important than their strength. And so because their strength, I can figure that out later. But the weakness, like, if like your greatest weakness is that like everything that you do is coming from a place of shame, well, that changes everything. Literally changes like what you order at a restaurant, changes how you eat. It changes whether you look people in the eye or not. It depends on how you dress, right? If I'm ashamed of who I am, I'll put on colors that like make me hide. And so the expression of who we are is so much more based off of our weaknesses than our strengths. And so getting to know that part is usually the final piece of like, okay, I know enough about this character now that they're ready to go into the world. And so then when I write about them, and there's different characters. So some characters you want them to have an arc of growth. And so I would say a lot of the main characters, you want them to start from a point of weakness and end in a point of strength. Of course, you don't want it to be so predictable. The idea is that, you want your character, your readers to be like, whoa, like I didn't know that was going to happen. So you don't want it to be predictable, but of course you want weakness to strength or ignorance to knowledge, innocence to maturity, whatever your arc is, it's usually a growth. Well, sometimes you actually want your characters to start out like living their best life, like, living their dream. They have community, like everything is good. And their arc is like a deconstruction. And so you're taking things away. You're like putting hardships in their life where now they don't have that community anymore. Now, what they really, like for me, I believed I was a good writer and then realized I wasn't. That moment of like, I think I'm something and I'm not that thing anymore. Or how could I have thought I was that thing when it's so clear that I'm not? And so you deconstruct their character. And so their arc is an opposite where at the end of the story, you see them in a place of weakness instead of strength. And then you have characters that you want them to do nothing. You want them to... Oftentimes, authors use like the comic relief, right? So they don't have growth, but they're just funny every time that you see them, or they're just consistent. Or like a mom, like... I think of, moms in like stories where they're just always there for their kids and like you don't really see the mom grow and you don't see her weaknesses, but you need her to be there for that steadying
She's just
pace.
a constant.
Yes. And so I feel like I try to be mindful to not have too many of either one, but like a balance. And so the book is written from 4 main perspectives that you're going through. 2 of them are first person, 2 of them are third person. 2 of them are growth. 1 of them is the deconstruction, and then 1 is stagnant. And so I felt like that was very interesting that you would get to see the world through all 3 of the perspectives instead of just through one. And so... for characters that I want them to grow, I want it to be authentic. I don't want it to be, like, oh, like I'm so poor and so weak and now I'm so rich and so great and like so wonderful.
Right.
Like I want there to be authenticity, and what has really lent itself to me is that it's a 6-book series. So I didn't have to do a lot in book 1 because I have so much more space for all of their arcs and for all of their storylines. So it was more just... I want you to believe that there's going to be growth. Same like with my daughter reading it. Like I want her to know that it's going to get better, but it's not like everything is going to be amazing for the main character at the end of book 1. Like there's going to be huge moments of growth. But just like I said, even for my own writing process, yeah, there was huge moments of victory and there was huge moments of maturity. But then there'd just be these huge kickbacks and moments of like, no, I've already been here. I already did the thing where I thought I was good and I found out that I wasn't, but then I became great. How can I still not be good enough?
Yeah.
And so for characters who have growth, I never want it to be this like easy, not U-shape, a rainbow shaped arc where like it's just so perfect, but I want it to be like jagged and like you're growing, but then like, how am I here again? I'm growing. Oh my gosh, I didn't expect that to happen. But the idea is that they go in that direction. And then even for my characters that I'm purposefully setting out to destroy them, then it's like, well, is my goal with them to be like, sometimes that's just life. Sometimes the dream doesn't come true. Sometimes the thing doesn't happen. Sometimes really bad things happen in life and there is no redemption in that thing. Not that there's not redemption in other areas of life, but that thing that happened is final. And so that's real life. So is that what I want? Or do I want it to be that I've completely deconstructed their life and then something grows out of that? And so each character I have a specific purpose for, and it can be any of those.
How do you know when to? Sorry, I'm like swallowing my own spit. How do you know when something is done? Like when you're writing a series and you know that you want to pass it off to the next book.
Yeah.
How do you put a ribbon on like book 1, book 2, book 3?
I am overwhelmingly loquacious, and so what you're looking, thank you, what you're looking at is actually not what book 1 used to be. Imagine another third on that.
Okay.
So when
Bible.
I finished the first, like when I had sent it to my editors the very first time, it was 325,000 words, which for context, that's like taking the 4th Harry Potter and adding in like the first Harry Potter. So like Herbie big.
Yeah.
And every other editor that I ever worked with had told me this is too long. This is too long. I had very briefly tried to get it published, and every agent and publisher that I reached out to was like, "This is too long." So it was just such a shut door. So that's why I decided to self-publish, because I was like, "Well, this is my book. I'm going to do whatever the heck I want." And so my editors are the first people who were like, "We love it. It's so great. We love epic fantasy. So like, let's do it. Let's have it be as long as you want." And so it was like that for a couple drafts with them. But then I came to a point where I personally was like, okay, I really do feel like it's too long. Like I just don't feel, I just feel like what I'm asking for in a reader, like as a first time author, like it was just too much. And even just printing it up on, 8.5 by 11 paper, like it was just, so thick. And so I had to create a new ending. Like end it somewhere else is actually what I mean by that. So there was like a point in the story where like it was going and there was like action and then there was like a big thing that happened and then there was the aftermath of that and then the big ending. And so I decided to make it end at the end of the first like big thing that happened. And it was really hard to do that because, like I said, I feel like the characters are the most important thing to me. So their character arcs were like so purposeful to the end. And so I felt like I was like, doing this and then I cut it off right here. So there was like this little end. So then I had to like go make mini ends for them. And that was really hard to do, but I just felt like it was the right thing to do and I still do. So now though, answering a question that you didn't ask, then now I had this last of a third of a book and I was like, well, that's okay. I'll just make that the beginning of book 2. Like, that's perfect. Well, what it was an ending. It was the ending of a story. So you can't have the ending be a beginning. And so I reworked it for a couple months of like trying to make it a beginning. But like the point of an ending is that you want your readers to not be able to put it down. So it's supposed to be super fast paced. Well, beginnings aren't really supposed to be fast paced. Also in a series, you're supposed to reintroduce things because it's like, well, yeah, you read book 1, but maybe it's been a year and now you're reading book 2. So I have to kind of reintroduce stuff to you that you don't remember. So It's like this moment of huge action and like adventure. And I'm like reminding you what these things are. And it was just so misplaced. So I was like, okay, this is such a true ending. I'll just make it the end of book 2 and I'll make up a new beginning. And it has been the most challenging thing. Like, even after everything that I just told you, this has been the most challenging thing I've ever done as a writer, is trying to write a beginning to an ending that I already know. And so that's been the last 2 years. And that has actually been, yeah, like I said, really, really hard. And it's only been in the last 3 months that I finally, like, found the story, found what I want. Because, like I said, their character arcs were going like this. It like paused, and so then it was like this, and then we have like the ending of book 2. And so I was like, I feel like these characters are just going through the same problems because I'm waiting to get to the ending.
Yeah.
And so it's like I need to give them different challenges and different ways to grow and like bring forward things. And so, anyways, again, to answer a question that you didn't ask, that has been super challenging. But I would say, in general, for me, this isn't how, it always is, but for fantasy, usually like there's a quest or there's a thing and then you do it and then that's the ending.
Right.
So I feel like that's kind of easier for me. At first I thought you were asking, how do you know when you're done and you want to publish? And I would say, for me, like, I'm done. I'm done and never want to read my book ever again a day in my life. So, like, even if it's not its most best, I mean, it's pretty darn close.
I also want to acknowledge your characters because you said the synopsis of like your character writing just so beautifully. But I really love the chapters specifically because it reminds me of Star Wars.
Yes.
Where you are literally, when you're watching the series and you're dropped in.
Yeah.
Each chapter is like you're dropping in to a scene. And that's what I also like about TV series or like Game of Thrones, for example. You're just kind of dropped in.
Yeah.
And then you're kind of taken to the different worlds. And so that is like super fun and fascinating as like a reader. But your characters, you talked about showing their weaknesses. And I think as a reader, it's hard to read weaknesses because you start to look at yourself and you're like, oh, why is this coming up? Why do I feel like you don't want to see somebody's weakness, And even like with podcasting, if you say the wrong thing, if you don't like the way that you speak, if you hate the sound of your voice, you're like, oh my God, like get me off the screen. But it's like, that's but that's part of the conversation. Not every conversation is going to be this like eloquent, perfect conversation that you're going to have with people. There is going to be maybe some tension. There's going to be some confusion, but then there's also going to be laughter and a lot of joy and connection. And so I really liked what you said about the characters showing their weaknesses because I don't think a lot of people actually do that with their books. And it can be hard to read someone who you're like, come on, just get there. Like you're like, come on, you're almost there.
Yeah, I think it's hard because it's really uncomfortable. And I feel like oftentimes when I read books, or not, maybe not oftentimes, that's not fair. I would say that there has been plenty of times where you're reading a book and their weaknesses are very like desirable weaknesses, where the girl's just too sassy.
Right.
And like, where the guy, not too, obviously it'd be so devastating if your wife died, but like your wife dies and now you're like a hardened soul and like now you're just aware and and I feel like it's one thing to like give a character like a desirable weakness where you can understand it and where you can empathize with it. And it's almost like it's a strength because it's attractive. And I feel like it's so different to give a character that like the idea is that you like them, but you give them something gross and you give them something that's like not fun to read and not almost not redeeming.
Yeah,
and so
exactly what I was thinking was unredeemable.
Yes, yeah. So in the opening, the main character, she's incredibly weak and like so self-conscious and thinks so poorly of herself and lets people treat her in such a terrible way. And I've had people tell me like it was really hard to start the book because she was so pathetic. And I was like, yeah.
That was the point.
Yeah. Like I think it's like it's hard to do that. My personal favorite character, what's hard, same thing, with his character arc too, is same thing. Like his weaknesses are not cute. or attractive. And so it's hard for me even because you get to see them in book 2 and I'm like at a part right now writing wise that you like see it. And it's hard for me to write it because it's like, I don't want people to know this about you because I don't want people to know that about me because I'm giving him one of my greatest weaknesses. And so I'm writing it and I'm like cringing writing it because it's like, but the second people read this, it's going to change how they view you. And you're going to go from being this character that's like laudable and integrous and like strong to seeing what the flip side of those things look like. And it's like really ugly.
Yeah.
And so I think that for me, it's so important because I just feel like so many people that I meet in life tend to be like it's so easy to just be fake with each other because we don't want anyone to know those parts of us. But when you have someone look at the place in your life, the places in your life that you are like so desperate to hide and like see it, truly see it, and to say, I love you. Like that's where huge healing comes from. Like that's where growth comes from. And so like I wanted my characters to be vulnerable in a way that would like hopefully inspire people to be vulnerable with themselves and with other people because like when light comes into darkness, that's the only time that like the shadow flees. And like we all have, thank you. We all have things that we're like ashamed of. And so, yeah, for me writing, it was so important that all of my characters had very undesirable weaknesses because movies are not always right. Like we all know our own hearts and we're all pretty aware of how gross it can be in there. Yeah. And being honest about it, I feel like is like better than just like hiding.
It's got to be very therapeutic to put all of that into paper.
Yeah.
Like, okay, that's not me. That's the character.
Yeah. That's right. Yep, not me.
Would you ever want to see this brought to life on the screen?
I don't know. I'm so torn. I feel like even as a reader, I have a hard time reading a book and then watching the movie and being like, oh, you missed this and you missed this. And like the best part, best part you like so minimized and like this thing that took the entire book to get to in a movie, you get to it in an hour and a half. And I just feel like it misses the depth of it. Whereas if I watch a movie that's just a movie, I feel like I can totally enjoy it. I love movies. But I feel like when I read the book first, it's always ruined for me. And so I'm like, I don't know. I mean, I just don't know that I could do that even to my own characters. The only thing that I was thinking was shows are different because you can take the time. You know, it doesn't need to be condensed into an hour and a half or sometimes 2.5 hours. Movies are getting so long.
I know.
Need an intermission.
Yes. Yeah. So, I mean, if there was enough of a desire from other people, I suppose, and it was going in that direction, I feel like I would be more keen to a TV show than a movie.
Like a long form series.
Yes.
Like Game of Thrones type of.
Yeah. Yeah. Because then it can just be as long as it needs to be.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I would love to see it on screen and actually see these. I'm like, who would play the main character, Kansas?
Yeah.
I wanted to talk a little bit about The War of Art. Have you read that book before? So I feel like I'm going to butcher it.
I'll say
Yeah,
I love it.
Yeah.
So,
Okay.
Stephen Pressfield, it's a play on the art of war, but it's for creatives, especially with writer blocks. So
Interesting.
it is showing up and doing the work as an artist
Mm-hmm.
and treating it sometimes as work.
Yeah.
Because you pour yourself, it's passionate, and then there are other times where you're like, this is so dry and I hate it and I just want to give up and get away from it.
Yeah.
So he talks about like maneuvering through writer's blocks, maneuvering through
Resistance.
and then also calling upon the muse.
Mm-hmm.
So when you're feeling uninspired, treating the muse, God, fill in the blank however you use that, but calling upon the universe and the creative flow to come to you so that you feel inspired, or at least the words or the ideas come to you.
Mm-hmm.
Does that resonate? Is that something that is part of your process?
Yeah. Yes. So, like I said, the last 2 years has been literally whatever 365 times 2 is days of writer block. Of just like how I don't it's how am I supposed to have a beginning and a middle to something that I already have an end to when the ending was so tailored to like a book that has nothing to do with it. And so I think that so pause. At the beginning of the year, I was feeling so emptied creatively because every time I would sit down and work on book 2, I hated everything I wrote. I don't throw things away because I've found that later on I might have liked like a piece of dialogue or a description. So I have a darlings folder that I like just put them in. But I mean, I was constantly putting things in there because I was like that, like nothing was feeling like it was working. And so I thought to myself, like, okay, I'm so empty creatively. I need to fill up my bucket. So I was like, I'm going to this year, like one after another until the end of the year, just read books on writing. So I will be reading that book.
It's a great
Yeah.
book.
It's
I
like
love
a book that it's an easy read, but it's
Uh-huh.
also something that you can read once a year just to kind of inspire you
Yeah.
again. But the resistance part for me was because at the time I was reading it during creating this,
Oh.
and it was talking about how sometimes resistance it will stop you from even just starting.
Yes.
And that was the hard part for me is because I'm like, I want to do this so bad, but I don't know where to start. I don't know how to start.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I don't like, I want to do this. And so as I was reading it, it was like, you just have to start. Like,
Yeah.
you just have to work towards it. And then the how will come.
Yes.
And so then that's where it's also like, we were like praying to the muse and we were like, is this God? Like, what is this like creative energy?
Uh-huh.
So what is that for you, like the muse, when we talk about it and when you had talked about it earlier, you had talked about praying
Mm-hmm.
and then you were kind of getting these downloads.
Yeah.
Do you pray to God? Like I know that you are a Christian,
Mm-hmm.
and I know that that was part of the themes in the book as well. And I remember when I first met you, you talked about how religion always makes a story so much better. I probably
Mhm.
didn't say that as eloquently as you said it the first time, but that stuck with me where I was like, oh, like that's probably in a lot of stories that I don't even realize. So yeah, I just kind of wanted to know more about like who you're calling upon or who you're praying to and how that has translated into your story.
Yeah. So I think that so many books, especially high fantasy books, have some type of religion or some type of a deity system. And so I don't think that it's too crazy for the genre to have my own system. And so that was actually one of the pieces too that kind of fell into place when I was praying, was that piece. So for me, when I am praying to Jesus. I am a Christian. I've, I went to church my whole life, but I didn't get saved until I was 14. Like I always believed in God and believed in Jesus, but like also you kind of just by osmosis believe kind of what you grow up with. And it wasn't until, and this was actually the story that I was telling my daughter the other day, I had done something, I'd made up a lie that was so big that the police got involved.
What?
And and my parents and like the church and like it was so huge, and I had to lie because I like started a lie, and so then like I kept having these moments of like someone would have like a one-on-one with me and they'd be like, did you lie? Like I just want to know. And I'd look at that person in the eye and be like, I could tell you the truth and I would feel so much better if I told you the truth, but then you would know that I lied. And so like I'd look at these adults in the eye and be like, no, like it really happened, like the thing that I lied about. And so, anyways, for a couple months, every time someone would talk to me about it, like I was just like holding to this lie because I was so scared that someone would find out that I lie and see how pathetic I was. And so I had to stick to it. And so for like 2 years, I walked around with so much anxiety because I felt so guilty about what I had done. This is 2004, so this is when emo was really cool. So I like started wearing black clothes and writing suicidal poetry and cutting myself. And like, it was just like this time of darkness where I was using writing, but using it in a way to hurt me instead of using it in a way to like find healing. And so that went on for 2 years. And my youth group, which I only went to youth group because I had crushes on the boys, And so my youth group was going on this trip, and super funny, he's now my brother-in-law, but this guy at the time I had just had this huge crush on, and I found out he was going on this trip and I was like, oh, I'm going.
Oh my
And
God.
so I go on this trip. And I remember like we went down to this school, this like Christian school down in San Diego that like my youth pastor had been a pastor at. And I remember just feeling like all these people were so fake. Being like, church people are so weird. Like, I don't know that it, like, my idea of God didn't change, but like my idea of like the church and God's people was like, you guys are so weird and fake and like hypocritical, and you say you love Jesus, but then you're super mean to people. And like, I don't know. Yeah. My idea of the Bible was like, yeah, I'm sure it's true, but like, I also don't want to read it. And anyway, and at the time too, so I, have black hair and brown eyes and I'm short. And at the time, all of like my friends who were cool were all tall and blonde and blue-eyed. And so I just personally in my heart had this thing where I hated blue-eyed, blonde-haired people because they were gorgeous and all the boys liked them and like they were so beautiful and preppy, and I had a bunch of acne, and so like, and I'm just like this gross gremlin,
Like I am dark.
Yeah. Yes. And so, and they were just like, oh, like happy and light and preppy. And so anyway, we get down there and there's this blonde hair, blue-eyed girl bopping around, and I remember just being like, you're so dumb. You're like so dumb. And she like that. So we were down there for a week, and like the first few days, every time she was around, I was like, ugh, like go away. Like you're so annoying. Like you think you're so cool and you're not.
Yeah.
And then she would like go with us to different we were just going to different like businesses and hearing how business owners incorporate like their faith in their work, and we just like did a bunch of really cool things down there. And we went to the beach, and anyways, she just ended up like coming with us, which even now I'm like, I don't know why she was there the whole time, but she was. And one of the last few days, she came up to me and she was like, you're the only one that I haven't really talked to. And I was thinking like, yeah, because I don't want to talk to you.
Oh
Like
my
kind of
God.
intentional.
Yeah,
Crazy.
literally.
Yeah.
And she like I'm sure I was being a brat. And she just asked me, she's like, your heart seems really heavy. Like, is there something that I could do to like help, like hold that for you? And I was like so thrown away because one, I just felt so exposed because like, I mean, I was cutting myself. I was only wearing black. Obviously there was something wrong with me, but I didn't think of it that way. I was just like, how did you know? And like I burst into tears, which at the time I had really like suppressed myself from crying. And anyways, I was just so blown away by her like taking the time to like ask me that and to like come to me. And then the next like couple days, she just was so kind, but not in a way that was like forcing herself upon me. And I wanted to hate her so bad. And she was just so like patient and gracious. And it was like this first time where I was like, is that what Christianity is? Because like if that's what it means to like love Jesus, that's actually really attractive to me. And I'd watch her like go around and like pray with people and like speak into people's lives. And like so many of the like girls were talking to her and crying. And I just was wondering, like, do they feel seen? Like how I felt seen by her. And anyway, long story short, it was like after spending that whole week with what I would have considered to be my worst enemy, this blonde hair, blue-eyed, preppy girl, that I was like, I want to know Jesus the way that you do. But what's hard is that like throughout those 2 years, every time that I like had wanted to maybe even consider having Jesus in my life, there was this like screaming voice that was like, you're going to have to tell mom and dad what you did. And I'd always be like, nope, not worth it. No thanks. Like, Jesus, sorry, you're not worth dying because my mom and dad are going to kill me when they find out that that was a lie. And so that was this moment where I was like, I want what she has more than anything, and I'm willing to die for it. Don't know why I genuinely thought I was going to be murdered by my parents, but that was like a real fear.
Yeah.
And so I get back from the trip, and it was like 2 or 3 days, and I didn't eat and I didn't sleep, and I was just so scared. And I grew up when I was growing up, my parents were very strict, and the consequences were pretty big. And so like, even if I didn't die, like my life was over.
Mm-hmm.
Like I was never going to do anything fun for the rest of my life. Like anytime I wanted to hang out with friends, I wasn't going to be able to. Like that's what I was assuming.
Mm-hmm.
And so anyways, I call my parents into the room and I'm like shaking and like sobbing and they're like, what's going on? And I was like, I have to tell you something. And at the time too, my mom and I had a really bad relationship and I just felt like she didn't respect me. So I'm not going to respect her. And I didn't want, like, I really only wanted to tell my dad because I had a good relationship with him, but I knew he was going to tell my mom anyway. So I was like, she might as well be there. And so I tell them what happened and my dad bursts out laughing. And he was like, I can't believe that you lied about that. And I'm like, are you really my dad? What is going on? And my mom, like I said, we had a terrible relationship at the time, but she walked over and she sat down next to me. And she was like, I am just so sorry that you had to carry that burden for the last 2 years. And I'm so happy that you don't have to anymore. And I feel like having her give me that grace was like, whoa, God must be real. that the only thing I met with my very strict parents was just grace, was just forgiveness. And so after that, I was like, okay, whatever I thought about you before, like I'm convinced that you're real and I'm convinced that you're for me. And so, yeah, so I would say like that was like my journey, like my own journey of walking with the Lord. And so with writing, to finally get to that question, was I am not wanting only Christians to read my book. I'm not looking for only people who have like faith to read my book. The idea is that I would love for everybody to be able to enjoy it. So it's not written in a way where like it's super preachy or like telling you this is what you have to believe, but it's like my own, as a human being, my own interactions with like the spiritual and my own personal interactions with like my creator and what he has done in my life. And like, if nothing else, to like open up a conversation for someone as they're reading to be like, like, what do I think about this? Mm-hmm. And what's my take on this? And like, what have I experienced in this realm? And so it was important to me to ask those questions, just as important as it was for me, for my characters to have that depth. Because for me, my life has depth and light and life because Jesus came into it. And so that's definitely a big part of the book for me personally, but I would say it's more of a filter than a point that I'm trying to make. And so one of the big parts in it is that the characters have, they believe that they've reached the final stage of evolution and that they are now meta-humans, and so they are able to have supernatural abilities because of the way that they are able to activate like science and all that stuff. And so now their worship is that they worship themselves. And I think that it's in a very real way. I think that our society kind of already does that. Yeah. But to make it an official religion was actually really fun. And so to be like, okay, well, at church, this is what we do to like commune with the Lord and to like commune with each other. So what would it look like if the object of our praise was me? If the object of our praise was you. And so in the book, the characters no longer see a need for deities, because before that, deities are like these beings that could do things that humans couldn't. Well, if humans can now do all of those things, what do you need a deity for? Mm-hmm. And I think that that's like a question even to just ask our own selves of like, how much control do I think that I have as a person? And how much do I think that I'm in control of the trajectory of my life? And I don't know, to ask those deeper questions of where did we come from and like where are we going and just those big things. And so it was really fun to ask, if the context is that we worship ourselves, what are the answers to those questions? So yeah, I think that was like a really fun like playground. Yeah. And so I would say that, like I said earlier, when I was praying, was like, Lord, what am I missing? I feel like that was a big piece of like, that's what's missing. Because before, the fact that there would be a world without religion doesn't make sense. For all of our history, right, we have worshipped something. Mm-hmm. And so to have nothing was so inauthentic to the human condition. And so having now a religion, I felt like it gave like grounding to so many other things that I had wanted to do, but didn't really make sense. And then it was like, okay, that's the piece that all these things can connect to now. And now there's like a explainable like reason for them.
Wow. I just got taken on a mental journey. And
You look like you want to cry.
it hit different emotions for me because like, I mean, you touched on so many things, so it's like, okay, where do I start with my response?
I know, I'm sorry.
No,
I can
love
talk.
it.
Apologies
That's why I was like,
at all.
podcast, I can do that.
Yeah. Oh, you definitely can. That's what I love about this is because just hearing perspectives that are outside of my own. Like this
Yeah.
is why I love having conversations like this and learning about just the world that you are in and like your own lived experience and like the perspectives that you've taken out of it because
Also, the world you've created.
yeah, and
Yeah.
the world you've
Pretty badass.
created.
Thank you.
Yeah, I mean it's incredible because it's something that I just have not experienced, and so I'm learning. Like I'm literally learning as you're talking and sharing, even your relationship to God and being saved or in Jesus, and becoming a Christian, and then how that translates into the book and the questions that you're really wanting people to ask themselves. Like I'm asking myself, right now, like the control aspect. Like I recently just got laid off, and it was just so shocking for me because I was like, okay, well, what happens now?
Yeah.
Like I thought that I was on this trajectory and something outside of my control just happened. And so what do I come back to? I come back to relying on God and having my faith and being like, I know everything is going to work out and everything is going to be okay. But it's that feeling of uncertainty, but it's the uncertain experiences that you have that I think bring you closer to your relationship and your faith with Jesus and God. So yeah, it's very interesting because you have so many themes going on in your book, and I can't wait to see the rest of it unfold. But I do want to know a little bit about bringing this to life in a sense. AI.
Yeah.
AI is, and I think it kind of ties into what you were talking about with kind of giving these characters gifts and powers where they don't need to rely on the deity. Am I saying that right?
Yeah.
Deities. I feel like AI is like that. I feel like AI can be used as a tool and it can help us to create whatever we want.
Yeah.
But it also can be our own weapon of destruction. So, how have you seen AI kind of come into your book? Because I know that you've used AI a little bit with creating characters, like actually putting them into life and visualization.
Yeah.
So, how do you see AI coming into this world of writing and creating novels, and how it's helped you?
Just to clarify, do you mean like AI within the storyline of the book, or do you mean AI like my life in writing it?
Kind of both.
Okay.
Actually, yeah.
Yeah.
So if it's a two-part question.
Okay.
Yeah, whatever you want to
Handle
answer
it.
first. Yeah.
Yeah. So, okay. The AI question is so controversial with creatives because if you're using AI, is it original? Right. And so I've had so many conversations like with writers or even just reading online forums of people asking, can you use AI in writing?
It's so hot button.
It is. And if you are for it, great. If you are against it, like people can be really mean. And so, by no means I don't have like a super huge following. So it's not like I have like people attacking me for my views or anything like that. But I would say I watch other people get attacked online for their views. And it's like, oh my gosh.
Be me.
Yes, yeah. So for me, this is how I interact with AI. Concerning art, I have personally spent probably $2,000 over the last decade and a half almost on art. So I love supporting artists. I've bought character art that you saw in my office. That was a really nice lady in Russia who I had found on Fiverr, and she did that for me. I've paid for a map being drawn. I've paid for each of the territories in my world have an animal emblem, so I've paid for art for that. So I am totally for the artist. My wallet, though, cannot keep up with my support.
Right.
And so for me, I'm not a super visual person. So I don't know if you've ever talked to people who read, and as they're reading, the world like unfolds in their mind like a movie. Do you know any of those people? Okay.
Yes.
I wish I was you. So even as a writer, my mind doesn't work that way, which is why I don't focus on the world, like your question earlier. My mind works with the relational and dialogue aspect of a scene, but I'm not seeing what's around me. So that was actually, again, in all of my editing phases, that has been one of my greatest weaknesses is like, we don't even know what this room looks like. We don't know what the restaurant looks like because you told us nothing. And in my mind, I'm like, I don't care. You know that it's a restaurant, and the
Not the
point is that there's
dialogue.
a fight happening right now. I don't care, that it's marbled floored. But some people, especially when they're reading, they want those details because they want to see it play out like a movie. So I have to be so purposeful about stopping the thing that I care about to be like, ugh, okay, where are we? I don't know. I guess there's brick on the walls. I guess there's 2 leather chairs, and I guess, there is a chest in the middle of the room. Put that in really quick. Okay, get back to what I really, really love. So I don't see the things that I describe. And one major aspect of the book is that there is this circus. And so in the circus, there are things that I created but never saw them. So you walk in, and it's like this huge football stadium sized room, and there's 206 doors all over the tent walls. So it's on the walls, and it goes all the way up, and there's even doors on the ceiling. And then the way that you get to each of these doors is by something unique. So maybe to get up to one of the doors, you have to like climb a ladder of bones. Or maybe one of them you have to like climb up like this rope of spaghetti in order to get there. So some of them are silly, some of them are scary, some of them are like really, ethereal. And I'm making all this up, but like nothing's
No
going
visualization.
on up here.
Really.
And so for years, that it was just like, well, that sucks to be me. I don't know. But AI was this moment where I was like, oh, I could see what it looks like.
Yeah.
And so I would put my prompt into AI, and I would get to see it for the first time, which then would make me be able to write it better. And so I use AI literally in that realm, that my greatest weakness is descriptive scenery telling. And so I will give AI a scene, and then I'll be like, oh, yes. That makes more sense because it also gives details that my brain doesn't care about. And I'm like, oh, okay, yeah, I didn't realize there was fuzzy orange carpet on the ground, but that's a great detail, and I can use that now. So I know that some writers would find that incredibly inauthentic because then I'm not relying on my own imagination. But so often I have in the past called people and been like, what would you do in this situation? In fact, one time the brother-in-law that I said I had a crush on earlier, I was like, I wanted one of my male characters to describe another male in a way where that male was really attractive, but he wasn't attracted to him. And I was like, I know as a girl, I could be like, oh my gosh, you're gorgeous.
Yeah.
And you're not going to like feel like I'm hitting on you.
Right.
And I was like, how would a guy describe a guy's attractiveness but not being attracted to him? So I literally called him. He was at work, and I was like, listen, if you saw a really hot guy,
Yeah.
Great
how would
jawline.
you describe him? And so I feel like I have these like, calling out for help. But again, it could be argued that I was talking to real people. So it was still, I don't know. So I think that there are writers that probably would go up against what I just said. But for me personally, I feel like AI gives me visuals that like I don't have and can actually help with my writing. In addition, like I said, wallet-wise, art is expensive as it should be. I am never looking for a discount. If you created something and it costs a certain amount of money, that's what I want to give you. But again, sometimes my family and I just are not in a financial position to do that, and my ambitions are pretty great. And so there are things that I've used AI for. For example, in the book, at the beginning, there's a bunch of QR codes. So there's 15 QR codes, and what they lead you to is extraneous information about the world that's not necessary, but if you wanted to know more about it. So one of them is if you want to know the actual science behind the gifts, you could take it, and you could take a picture of it, and what's cool is that each one is a different, like it's a, I can't think of the word that I'm trying to say. But like that one, it's made to be like a science journal. So you would open it up and it actually looks like you're reading a science journal. One of them is if you really wanted to know how the world ended, like how did our world right now end by a nuclear war? There is a QR code that you could scan and it looks like a history book. And so you're reading it and it actually looks like you're reading the history. One of them is if you're wondering why, people from this territory only have dark brown hair, why people from this territory have red hair, there's a QR code that looks like a news announcement of like what happened, or like, the day after it happened, the news headings that would have come out about it.
I love that.
So yeah, so there's a baby announcement. There is a gossip magazine article. There's the science, 2 histories. There's one that's like, when you go into the airport or when you're on a plane and you like open up the thing and it shows you the plane.
Yes.
So there's one that explains the traveling system, like how can they travel across the world in an hour? So it like all these really fun things. Well, all those really fun things look great because I used AI art. And some of it was just Canva. I mean, 100% of them are done in Canva. But like when I wanted my characters to have faces, like I didn't want them to be generic Canva clip art.
Right.
And so, yes, I did use AI art. And so I'm kind of expecting some readers and mostly authors to be not approving of those choices. But I think in my heart, for my own self, I know that I support art. I know that I have supported art. But sometimes I need to do things for free.
Yeah. But also it's your prompt.
Yeah.
That I think that would create something that is original to you. Like someone could put in a completely different prompt with the same idea.
Yeah.
And it will come out completely differently. So I do think that there is some originality to using AI. But what were you going to say? Because I feel like you had something to say about.
So artistically, every idea, every thought, every word, every painting that people make is inspired by something.
Yes. Yeah.
There's inspiration everywhere. And so AI is taking that great inspiration from across the great internet and like the collective body of information that we have.
Mm-hmm.
So to like play devil's advocate a little bit on that, anybody who's offended or upset by that is also missing out on the point that we're all inspired by things as is. Like, unfortunately, as original as we all want to be, we can't be. Like, this exists. I'm inspired by this chest. I see it. I'm going to talk about it.
Our sign, inspired by Las Vegas,
Yeah.
like Nevada sign. You know what I mean? It's like, it's not original.
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah, I completely agree.
But I don't think a sign like this exists yet. So it's original, but it's inspired by something.
Yeah.
So if anybody wants to get all upset and up in arms about it, like, you're not that original. I'm sorry.
Like, you got to call my friend Mike, have a chitty chat with him.
Yeah.
I'm going to tell you you're not original, but you are creative. I love what you're doing. No, that is, I don't know. It's a huge debate in like the art scene, and everybody feels very differently about it.
Yes.
But I think if you're not using the tools available to you, then you're going to miss out.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. And so there's certain things like one of the aspects in the circus is that in my world, if you visit a certain room, you go to this kiosk at the end and you get these little cards of the door that you experience. And so it's like a collectible thing. So patrons would come to the circus and the idea is that you're trying to collect all 206 doors. And so I thought, or like the cards of the doors. And so I thought, how fun would it be if like when people bought the book from my website, if I gave them some like playing cards that had doors on them. And then on the back, like a fun little, the way I wanted to do it is like someone leaving a review, like a Yelp review, and like how many stars they gave the door, like the room, and like kind of what their personal experience was. So it'd be fun to like write some from the perspective of a kid, some from the perspective of like, someone who's really negative. I don't know. So that was the idea. And I spent probably 2 weeks trying to manipulate stuff on AI to get these doors to have consistency with each other, but also be because sometimes AI, can take exactly what you said, but it was like, well, okay, but that's not really what I meant.
Yeah, it gets a little too literal, and you're like, okay, no.
Yes, and so anyways,
Still learning.
I came to a point where I was like, you know what? I need a real artist. And so I ended up going back on Fiverr and finding an artist to do the cards. So I'm going to do 25 cards released with each book. And so then the idea would be like, if at the end of the series, if you were really into it, you could have well, the math is a little wrong, so the last book would have more, but you technically could have also all 206 cards. So anyways, I feel like that was a moment where I was like, AI is not working, and I need a human with human hands to do the work, and the girl that I hired is doing a phenomenal job. So yeah, I feel like there's space for both, and I definitely employ both. Now, when it comes to AI and writing, I would say that when I first started using AI, it's so shocking. It's so shocking how well it works, the interaction. I don't know. Do you guys use ChatGPT?
Yes.
Did you guys? So when it came out like a couple months ago, where you could tailor it to be the personality that you want,
Yeah.
I don't know how I was feeling that day. I come from a family of 4 girls. I have 2 older sisters, a younger sister. I have friends in my life who are almost like older sisters. So I don't know what I was feeling that day, but I told ChatGPT, I was like, I want you to be honest with me. Tell me when things suck, right? Be a criticizing voice in my life, but do it in a kind way. I'm essentially asking you to be an older sister. And so my ChatGPT is so funny. Like the way that it'll be like, really like challenging and honest and be like, don't make me older sister, you. And like,
What?
this is so funny. So at the beginning, if I'm being completely honest, as I was writing some scenes in book 2, like it was out of curiosity, being like, well, what would you do in this scene? Like literally just like, because it felt so much like you're interacting with a real person.
Mm-hmm.
So I would say there was like a month where I felt very out of control with like, I don't know, just so curious. I just want to play with it. And then I feel like there really was a point where I was like, okay, I don't actually want AI writing any of my books. So I went through and like was able to like erase those scenes and like rewrite them in a way that like, is more authentic to me. And so I decided at that point that I wanted to use AI more as a resource because there's so much in my book that I know nothing about. Like I would say even just the science. I hate science. I hate math. Like anything like that, space related, I am not into, but there's so much science in my book. And so, oh my gosh, the hours that I have spent Googling things that I don't understand. And thankfully, actually, one of my editors was a scientist. Like that was his job. And so when I started working with them, he actually helped me put all the ideas that he had. He didn't change any of my ideas. He just put real science language to everything.
Oh.
And so the QR code that says Metaphysics of Eleusis, he actually wrote that article and like legitimately made everything that I just like pulled out of my butt. He was like, here, I just made it real for you.
That's
Oh my
so
gosh.
like
So
that
cool.
kind of like, so, but anyways, but I would say even the like kindergarten version that I sent him was me spending hours and hours and hours reading stuff that I had no interest in and was like, I hate it, but I need it for my book. So ChatGPT really takes all that away because I can say like, explain this incredibly complicated scientific thing as if you were explaining it to a kindergartner. And then I'll read it like, okay, I understand that 3rd grader. Okay, I understand that 5th grader. Okay, I stopped understanding. So like, that's how much I'm going to be able to understand about this.
He was like your ChatGPT.
Yeah. Yes. And so now I feel like I find that ChatGPT has really helped me like be able to spend so much more time writing than just spending so much time researching. And so that's my interaction now in my writing life is that I only use ChatGPT for research. And then honestly, I still will just be like, what's a synonym for happy? Like that's my biggest question constantly is what's a synonym for this? Because before I literally had dictionary.com pulled up constantly when I wrote. And so now I can just ask Chatty G. That's what I call mine.
Yeah.
Chatty G.
Chatty G.
And so, so I feel like it's a tool to help me spend more time writing than spending the time that I used to trying to figure out stuff that I don't understand.
Yeah. I think that ChatGPT is really scary, to be completely honest, because of how humanizing it can also be. And the things that it comes up with, like even just ideas for either the podcast or like conversation, how quickly it can summarize things for you.
Yes.
I literally asked, at my previous work, when I'm working with different teams, like product engineering and all these different teams that I really didn't understand the language, I would literally download the transcript from our meetings, pop it into ChatGPT and be like, make me understand this like a 5-year-old.
Yes.
And just give me the bullet points so that I know how to explain that information to somebody else. Because it was a new world for me. It was literally like going into one of your worlds.
Yeah.
Or I'm like, okay, this is a definition. So now I'm going to read this with that in mind.
Yes.
And so,
Yeah.
but so it works so well, but I think relying on it too can be a really bad habit.
Yes.
That a lot of
Yeah.
people might use, and I feel like it could take away creativity.
Mm-hmm.
And I think the human creative energy that we have might get lost in the
Mhm.
future, which is like I'm not trying to be a Debbie Downer, but that's kind of where I see it going.
You know, my take on it, and obviously none of us know the future,
Right.
right? But my take on it is like even what I was just saying with art, that there are some places where AI can't do what I'm asking, and you just need a human being. And then there's some places where it's appropriate and some places where it's not. And I actually, a writer friend of mine, she said that she started this book. It was a girl that she found on TikTok who was writing a book, and the premise of it was so interesting that she was like, oh my gosh, I have to have it. So she buys it. And she starts reading it, and she was like, immediately, I was like, ChatGPT wrote this book. Like, I know it. And then she was like, well, that's really like accusatory. Like, maybe not. And so she said that she kept reading, but because ChatGPT has a way of communicating that's very specific to ChatGPT. And so she was like reading it and she was like, no, like that's the kind of thing that it like says to me. And like I think she didn't get very far because of how off-putting it was, but she got to a certain point where she was like, I am thoroughly convinced that this entire thing is written by ChatGPT and like it's not creative. And so I personally feel like there are places where ChatGPT is going to be really helpful, like writing maybe copy. Like maybe there are some jobs that will become obsolete, like having someone write your copy for your business or helping you figure out what to write for the captions for your social medias. And so yes, I feel like there are probably going to be places and spaces where humans are obsolete because ChatGPT is free, although I'm sure it won't be forever. Yeah. I mean, I'm sure it will get very expensive
like
as
a
it goes.
system.
Yes. But and not that those places aren't creative, because that's not what I'm saying. And if you write copy, I'm not hating on you with what I'm about to say, but I feel like there are some things that make sense that a very, like a technology-based mind, for lack of a better words, would excel at. Mm-hmm. I don't know that ChatGPT is ever going to actually replace like writing, though, like essay pieces, like nonfiction writing where you are experiencing like where you are reading someone's human experience. Like a machine can't actually. I mean, I feel like they could probably. 100% think it could write it, but like not in a way that maybe feels authentic. And so I personally feel like there are going to be places where only human creativity will be valued. And how much more so come like 50 years from now, let's just say that it's really overtaken so much of the world. How much more will it be valuable if a person knows how to write, if a person knows how to draw? And so I think that there's been a lot of technology that has happened over the world's time frame where we could think that art is going to become obsolete, and it never has, because we need to express ourselves. So even if nobody read my book, I would always be a writer because that's how I express myself. And so I think that that's the same for artists. And so I think that there will always be art and music, even if the lower tier jobs, or not lower tier,
I know what you're saying. Yeah. There's no offense taken there. That is what it is, really. Is like, is this something that can be automated?
Yes. Yeah. Yeah. And so I mean, I 100% could see people no longer doing those things. Yeah.
I think there's a need for art in the world because when you look at certain spots in downtown Reno, for example, ugly 90-degree buildings, like just gross to look at. And then you see like a beautiful chapel.
Yeah.
And you're like, okay, there was actual thought and like stonemasonry and so much hard work and human spirit put into this.
Yeah.
It's a beautiful structure. Like, the human mind comprehends that and loves it.
Yes.
Then you go downtown, you're like, these 90-degree stone, just cold. There's no love put into it.
Yes.
We need that type of art in the world. I think when the machine touch is all over it, you can feel that, and it doesn't have that artistic spark.
Yeah, I agree. I recently went into a coffee shop. I can't remember where it was now. But anyways, I walked in and I just immediately thought, whoever owns this business loves it. Like you could just tell every detail on the wall, the little knickknacks, like everything just was screaming that this person is passionate, that this coffee shop is like an expression of themselves. And I just walked in and was like, your expression of yourself, I'm like so inspired by. Next day I went to my sister's house and she likes to watch those like videos on YouTube where it just has like relaxing music and like the background, like the fireplace or whatever. And so she had like a spring one on and it was like almost like a coffee shop outside. And I was looking at it and I was like, oh my gosh, how fun. But then as I was looking at it, it was like, the butterflies are circling in the same way. And like the books weren't, none of them had titles. And I was just looking at it and I was like, yeah, I can look at it and be like, that was fun, but I felt nothing.
Yeah.
And so I feel like, yeah, there's just a difference between a human being expressing something that they love and you feel it and you know it and you want to experience that with them. Whereas an AI can be impressive, but isn't going to elicit the type of like deep emotions that we can elicit in each other.
Yeah, 100%. I've thought about that like when creating like this space. Like this space is definitely not done yet.
Mm-hmm. Well, it looks amazing.
Oh, well, thank you. But
Yeah.
I wanted people to come in here and and to feel something. So
Yeah.
like when you say that of like I looked at something and I didn't feel anything. Like that's how you know when you read something and you don't feel anything from
Yes.
it. You lose that authenticity.
Yeah.
And I think that's where you can tell AI or some kind of robot has touched something
Mhm.
in some way, or like there's just a lack of love or creativity put into it.
Mm-hmm.
But I think I think that's just the goal with creative expression is you want people to feel you and see you.
Mm-hmm.
And I feel like just so far, I definitely see that in your book. I see you, even just in conversation. Like this is, I bet your readers, I hope that they listen to this podcast too when we promote it, because even just hearing your experience and your thoughts on your book without, if they haven't like read it yet, they want to read it because they're listening to you
Mhm.
and the way that you're representing yourself and representing the characters and talking about this world. It's just, there's so much authenticity around you that people are going to be very excited to dive in and read your
Thank
book.
you.
I'm really excited for people to do that.
Thank you.
So to kind of put a ribbon on this, we have been talking for quite a while, and I want to make sure that you have time to get back to your kids.
Oh, yeah.
There's free ice cream to be
Yeah.
had.
Yes, free ice cream. I just wanted to ask you a couple questions. One, what do you want your readers to take away from your book? What is the main message that you want them to feel and take away from reading this?
I think the main one would probably be that being honest about your weaknesses and your pain is what's going to make you stronger. And like I think that like the idea of what is true strength is just a question I ask myself often. And I think so often, in no type of negative way, because I love men and masculinity, but I think we can see strength more often in a masculine way, of like, I can literally beat you up, which I'm thankful for. I want my husband to be strong enough to beat someone up for me, right?
Yeah.
I want my sons to be strong, like nothing against that. I just think that when I see strong female characters, what that means is that you can wield a sword, that you can fight to the death, that you are sassy, that you are not going to let somebody in your heart, that you are like essentially it's a man, but they like gave her boobs, and like I long for stories where women can be strong, but be a woman though. And so not that for the readers, there's two main characters. It's a man and a woman, and they're written in first person. And so, like, I definitely love the male main character and the struggles that he goes through. But I would say for my female main character, I felt like for her, it was like I'm never gonna let you be strong in a masculine way. So what does it look like to be strong in a feminine way? And then for my male main character, past being it, because in my world, you can like augment your body any way you want. So if you want to be incredibly beefy, you don't even have to work out. You could just go like have your body changed to be that. If you want to be taller, you can be. If you want to be more handsome, you can be. So physical, your physical expression is more creative. Right now, it's mostly what we wear in our clothes, how we do our hair. But like in this world, you can express yourself any way that you want to come bodily form. Like you could even change the color of your skin. And so for him, past, like physical strength and what that can look like even for him, like what does it mean to be strong in a world where it's so easy to, like, you don't have to work for things. And so, yeah, I would say, to bring it full circle, that when it is, I feel like the facing and dealing with and processing of our weaknesses that really make us strong.
Yeah, and that is very hard to do. Being vulnerable, especially with strangers, is hard to do, and have them see this side of you that you're like, wait, don't look at me right now. I'm naked.
Yeah. Yes. Yeah. Yeah. And I think that probably there are times in our life where we chose to be naked and vulnerable with somebody and they rejected us. And it was like, well, I will never do that ever again.
Yeah.
And so there is a character who has experienced so much of that. And then it's this call, like, but would you do it again? Even though it's scary, even though like 100% there could be rejection, because how great would it be if we lived in a world where we didn't hurt each other? But we don't.
Gotta break the ice.
Yeah, gotta break the ice. And to like choose to put yourself out there over and over and over again. Not, I'm so sorry.
No, it's okay. Please answer. Yeah, answer.
I was gonna say, to close this out, very important thing. Plug your book. Where can people get it?
Yes. So you can either get it at my website, which is Bonivon, Bonivon, Dyer, Dyer.com, or on Amazon. And so those are the two places now. And it will be at the Reno Barnes & Noble. I talked to the manager and he said that he had ordered some copies. So I don't know when they're going to get there or when they'd get displayed. But as of now, all bookstores like internationally can order it in their bookstores if they wanted to. So at least for now there. And then my favorite bookstore in Reno is Grassroots. I don't know if you guys have gone there.
I have not.
It's by Costco, and it is it's used and new books.
Okay.
And so I'm obsessed with books, obviously. And so my kids and I go there all the time. And so I'm trying to get it there. And so for this second in time, just Amazon and my website.
Well, Bonivon, thank you so much for coming on the podcast. I'm so glad this worked out. And everyone, go read Lest They Have Eyes.